Hi, everyone.
Hello, how is everyone?
I hope you can hear Panda okay. I think my microphone picks up pretty well, so if you can't hear him, let me know. But yeah, so today's first IRL collab with the wonderful Panda. Yay! Oh, and
Yay!
this is our friend Dragon, by the way. Here. Oh, you can hear both of us just fine. Good.
Okay.
There might be a little echo, but yeah,
Mhm.
that's me in dragon form.
Mhm.
You can hang out with the recycling.
I'm an action figure.
Yeah, so hey,
Hello,
Panda,
yay,
yay.
yay.
Both of us are here.
Mhm.
And we're going to make a little announcement.
Yes,
Yes, there are people who already suspect this.
and maybe some who already know. It's
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
probably the worst kept secret in VTubing right
Oh,
now.
right, right. Especially because of the way that we talk to each other.
Yes.
But we are dating.
Yes.
Yay! So we met on Voop Chat,
Mhm.
and we just got along so well from the
Yes.
beginning. And I know,
Wait,
like,
oh, wait, just Wit's
oh my
reaction.
god, I had no idea. Oh my god, gosh, it's such a surprise. So I don't know. Do you want to tell a bit of the story? Like, so,
Yeah.
so Panda and I met through Voop Chat, um, which is like a people sometimes refer to it as Omegle for VTubers, which isn't completely fair. It's a lot more controlled and organized than Omegle was.
Yeah.
Pretty much, you have to be a VTuber or a PNG tuber in order to join. And it's more for making friends to collab with.
Yeah, and I personally called it VTuber chat roulette.
Right,
Dating
right.
myself with that one.
Right, right. So, in one of the Voop Chat events, we got paired up to talk with each other.
Mm-hmm.
And, I'm pretty straightforward in who I am.
Mm-hmm.
To me, that's really important. Like, the person, lore aside, the person that I am in chat is who I am. I
Mm-hmm.
don't, I, you know, there's performance's sake for things, but um, I like to be really honest about who I am and how I feel about things, and I'm not afraid to speak pretty frankly with people about anything, really.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think because of that, and I think in many ways Panda's very much the same way, we hit it off really well
Yeah.
because I think when you're talking with somebody who's honest and sincere and pretty much clear about who they are, you get to know them a lot faster.
Yes.
Yeah.
Honesty and earnestness matter to me, and that was the first thing that I really kind of got out of Aspen was how um, earnest she was, and how she was just this person was it's a lady who is on the level and just 100%, who I was talking to was not a put on or anything like that. I could just tell by the way that she was speaking with me, and it might as well have been love instantly, because it was and we got to talking. We started talking off of Voop Chat. We started talking on Discord, and we really enjoy each other's company. We enjoy who the other person is,
Right.
and eventually I was gonna wait until Christmas Eve originally, do the anime thing, and confess to her then. But the day before Thanksgiving, I'm like, I can't put this off. I have to tell her now, and after the rather infamous Frostpunk stream that we had together, I was thinking to myself, oh no, when I was saying during that stream, oh no, what have I done? That was real, like that, like how I was feeling with Aspen as she was struggling and sounding really, really hurt by what was happening in Frostpunk. I'm like, oh no, what have I done to this lady? I have to do two things. I have to apologize, and now I have to make a decision on if I want to confess to her or not, because for all I know, she hates me now. And but I worked up my courage. I confessed that night. I pre-wrote it because I'm better for stuff like this. I'm much better with writing things ahead of time, and what I did, and I came to realize that if I was to write this live right now, I couldn't do it because my hands were shaking so very, very bad. And so thankfully thankfully she said yes, and it's been a very, very long time since I've had a girlfriend, and Aspen is proving to be an absolute gem.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that I really appreciated about Panda is I'm the kind of person who a lot of people will go to me if they're having a hard time. Mm-hmm. But they don't always come to me for fun because they're so used to thinking of me as somebody who helps them, who fixes things for them. That when it's time for fun, I guess sometimes it seems to them that I just remind them of their struggles, not of having fun, being a friend and going out and doing stuff. And I felt like always with Panda, I felt like this is somebody who doesn't see me as somebody that they can use as a substitute for getting health care, mental health care, or a substitute for being a parent. Mm-hmm. This is somebody who treats me like I am just a regular person. Mm-hmm. Who, shares interests with him. Yes. And, somebody who can have a lot of fun and be silly and, playful with. And he always tells me good news from his life. Mm-hmm. And, we were friends for like about 2 months, I'd say.
Thereabouts,
before
yeah.
you asked me out.
Yeah.
And it's kind of funny because, when he started messaging me a little bit more, but than I did initially. Because I'm just kind of a cautious person in some ways. Mm-hmm. Even though I'm very confident, I'm also cautious because I've been through some stuff, mm-hmm. And, but one of the things I always appreciated is that he came to me with good news. Mm-hmm. He would tell me good things that happened to him. And usually most people come to me and they tell me their problems. And it's like, not that that's a bad thing. I like being there for people. But I even more so like being there for people who actively want to make their own lives better. And it's not like they need me to fix things for them. They're already fixing things for themselves. Mm-hmm. And that's the kind of person who's really easy to support. So for me, like, I feel like, I felt like even at the beginning, I'm like, this person is real. Mm-hmm. This person is for real. This is somebody who takes an active role in making his own life better. Mm-hmm. And that's mm-hmm. the kind of person I want to be around because, that's how I feel about my life. Like, I'm not perfect, but I always try to be somebody who improves my own life. Mm-hmm. And that's something, again, that, I've talked a little bit about the kind of community I want to have here. I want people to feel like they have the power to make their own lives better. Mm-hmm. So when Panda asked me, I kind of suspected it. I had a feeling it would happen because he's always been so sweet and so kind to me, like incredibly so, and we talk very openly about some very deep topics, and I was kind of somewhat expecting it, and I when he asked me, I was like, okay, like this happened. And I was like, how could I possibly say no to someone who, whenever I see messages from him...
Hey, Alex.
Oh, hey, Alex, it's been a while. So how can I say no to somebody who, when I see messages from him, they make me smile every time? Like, why would I say no to somebody who's been such a positive and bright part of my life, especially because I've been through some stuff,
Yeah.
I'm not going to say no to somebody who makes my life better.
Do you remember Ochapup? How could I forget?
Yes, of course. Ochapup is one of my best friends. Yes. I know Ochapup was playing Satisfactory today. And I think he
said he was
trying to
finish
finish the game.
He said he was going to finish it.
Yeah. Ochapup is one of the people who already knows, too.
Yeah.
Ochapup knows. You have a message from him. Okay. There's a message.
Message you say?
Yes. And Ochapup is one of the brightest points in my life, too, because Ocha's such a wonderful person. Ocha's like so genuine and warm.
Also, Ocha has been working on a surprise for me. If you follow me at Panda Hero Ru on Blue Sky, and now a tentative announcement has been made for a re-debut.
Yes. Yay.
So, yeah.
I'm on the edge of my seat. I'm like,
hey, Digi.
Oh, Digi, hi, how you doing?
Yeah, we've been telling the story of how Aspen and I decided to get together.
Yeah.
Aspen and I are dating. Yep, Aspen and I are dating.
Yep, so. We are officially dating. And we are so happy.
Yeah.
And, I mean, I would always say we should always speak for ourselves. It's funny because I'm super independent.
Yes.
Oh. Okay. Somebody's hiney's crowning my Xbox. Somebody's cold. One is giving me chills. Guess I'll just close my eyes. Oh, yeah. All right. Feels good inside. Flip on the telly. Wrestle with Jimmy. Something is bubbling behind my back. The bottle is ready to blow. Say it ain't so. Your drug is a heartbreaker. Say it ain't so. Oh. Say it ain't so. Your drug is a heartbreaker. My love is a life taker. I can't confront you. I never could do that which might hurt you to try and be cool. When I say this way is a water slide away from me, that takes... Nice.
My thumbs.
My thumb. Your poor thumbs. Your poor thumbs. Thank you, though. No, I know that song.
Weezer.
Yeah. Say it ain't so. Your love is a heartbreaker. Yeah.
Thank you, Alicia and Alex.
Yeah. Thank you.
Wait, are you a fan of Weezer?
Only here for a bit on the app. I will jump
to my laptop in a bit. Hey, hey, it's always great to see you, Digi.
Yeah.
And like I said, Alex, Digi is one of my oldest friends on social media.
Yeah. No, Digi is incredibly cool.
Yeah, Digi's great.
I have so many cool friends around here. So.
But yeah, you got great taste in music. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah,
I think I have the Blue album in my vinyl collection.
I might have it on DVD. Not DVD, on CD. I'm not sure. I'm only here for a bit too. Cruise ship Wi-Fi is not super conducive to streaming. Oh,
Well,
yeah.
well,
No.
you got the big news, which Wit. So
Yeah, you're here for the big news. So,
Yeah,
yay,
so
we're
yay.
together. We're
Yay.
super happy. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So
So, today,
Mhm.
we are playing this cool card game
yeah.
called the Tea Dragon Society.
Mhm.
You know, because, I'm a dragon. The big news that I already knew. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
I mean, it was pretty obvious, especially sometimes because when Panda would stream and I would show up, he'd be like, "Oh, honey."
Hi, honey. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like I said, worst kept secret in VTubing.
Right.
But I think because we're both so small, we aren't, subject to having a bunch of fans having the Japanese idol mentality.
And I think generally, because of who we are,
Yeah.
we're not really the type of VTubers who would draw in that kind of crowd anyway. Yeah, I'm a dragon. Here, look. There, that's me. Wait. Yeah, that's me.
The dragon.
I know. A red panda and a dragon. Like,
Yeah.
gosh, how does that make sense in a relationship? A song from Pete's Dragon.
Oh, okay. I was thinking Animaniacs too. Will somebody
Yeah.
stop these people from saying dragon?
Yeah. So this is it's a neat game. It's the Tea Dragon Society. So if a lot of more indie comics, the Tea Dragon Society is a graphic novel. And it's very mellow and chill and cool. It's a very, it's like the lo-fi of graphic novels. Like if you know of Princess as well, kind of similar. It's about a group of people who raise tea dragons. So, in this game, we each have a dragon. So Panda is playing with Jasmine. I'm playing with Ginseng. And we are going to go through this game. We went over the instructions. I don't know. My brain is already like...
My brain's a little fried, so
Yeah,
this might be a little bit of an ordeal, but it's okay.
But luckily this game comes with these little cards, these little instruction cards that are like little guides to help remind you how to play the game. So pretty much the job of this game is you have your card with your dragon, and your job is to raise your dragon. Kind of like, how to raise your dragon, except they're tea dragons and they're small and chill. You're probably not going to ride them into some kind of adventure. It's pretty relaxing. So through this card game, you go through different seasons. So the first season you go through is spring. That's what these cards are up here. They're green on the top. And then each season has a different color. And the point of this game is to get as many growth points as possible. Dragon's named after tea. Uncle Iroh is smiling. Yes. I actually have an Uncle Iroh teacup. But yeah, so you go through the seasons, and as the seasons go, you raise your dragon, and you earn points. And by the end of the game, you add up your points, and you find out who wins by how many points they make. It's not a super competitive game. It's pretty chill, I think. But it's pretty fun. So we're going to try this. So first of all, we have our own separate piles, like these. And these are specific to our characters. So his pile is specific to Jasmine. My pile is specific to Ginseng. So what you do at the beginning of the game, you turn over one of these, and you end up with a card here. This over here, let me double check everything.
That is a growth point.
Yes, that is a growth point. That is a cost point, essentially. So that's how much you have to so-called pay to buy a card. Now, these are market cards in the middle, and you can buy these cards for the growth points. So there, this one that says feeding, that's 3 points. Iron teapot says 5 points. Sleeping is 3 points. Brush is 3 points. So these different cards have different values that help you. They either give you growth points, or they have some specific action that they have that helps you along in the game. When I was a young boy, my father took me into the city to see a marching band. He said, "Son, when you grow up, would you be the savior of the broken, the beaten and the damned?" Yeah. Da, 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 da. Everybody recognizes the music. Yeah. It was just hilarious. Don't let Ocha make you post too many songs.
For all we know, we're gonna get a copyright claim for singing karaoke.
No. Well, it's probably a good thing I don't have the chat up on my screen.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Right. So, and I'm gonna have these. We have the instructions right there.
Yep.
So we can reference.
But we do have we have these helpful cards with us, as you saw, and we can take one of two actions. We can either draw a card from our deck or buy a card, paying the market cost, and then we have to refill the tableau eventually. We can also can buy memory cards.
Yeah. And when there's one memory card left, then we have to switch to the next season.
Yep.
Give you a song to give to Ocha.
First one that comes to mind for me is Brain Damage by Pink Floyd.
Okay. Yeah, let me think. Is there a song that I would think of with Ocha?
I don't know what kind of music he's into.
I don't know. I'm trying to think of an anime theme song. Like a good one. I mean, the thing is, like, my favorite anime theme song is the first opening theme song to Tokyo Ghoul. Because I think that one's incredibly good. But I don't think it's necessarily Ocha. I want to send Ocha a happier theme song.
Oh, Catch You Catch Me from Cardcaptor Sakura.
Ah, there we go. Catch You Catch Me from Cardcaptor Sakura. Sakura.
Yes.
It's funny because sometimes, so I've spent a lot of time around Japanese speakers, though I don't speak Japanese.
Yes.
So depending on who I speak with, if I speak with somebody who's Japanese, my pronunciation of Japanese words will change. Laptop crashed as soon as you sign in. Damn it.
No.
Cruel.
Oh,
so
no.
Cruel. So, like, anyway, part of me, like, if I'm speaking with other Americans, I'll just say, like, Cardcaptor Sakura. You know. But if I'm talking to somebody Japanese, I'll be like, yeah, Cardcaptor Sakura. You know?
I just got used to saying things the Japanese way.
Mm-hmm.
And, that's kind of worn off. Which one? The Cardcaptor Sakura one or the Pink Floyd song? Yeah, I got used to saying things the Japanese way, pronouncing things the Japanese way. The one thing that I have been constantly praised on, no matter what foreign language I'm speaking, is that my pronunciation is always good.
Yeah, for me it's the first one.
That would be Brain Damage by Pink Floyd.
Right.
It's off the, it's the next to last track on Dark Side of the Moon, if that's helpful.
I went once, speaking of Dark Side of the Moon, I went once to, so back when, in the days when I lived in San Francisco, they have a really cool science museum there called the California Academy of Sciences. It's one of my favorite museums in San Francisco. The Exploratorium is incredibly cool as well. But they had, I think they still have the planetarium there, and they used to do these laser shows at the planetarium. They had, and I went to one where it was for Star Trek: The Astral Symphony. So they had a laser show set up in the planetarium for that. And then they had a Dark Side of the Moon one with all the songs from Pink Floyd's Dark Side of the Moon.
It's funny you mentioned that because they had Dark Side of the Moon, like a visual space experience at Le Grand Théâtre in Quebec City. And it was basically, a 40-minute show because that's about as long as the album is. And it was basically like 3D CG trips through space and time and stuff like that, and it was great. Which ironically, time is one of the standout tracks in Dark Side of the Moon. Right. And maybe I should have said that one, but it was a grand old time. And I'm like, oh man, this is great. But it was kind of tough because they didn't have dedicated seats like that. It basically was like, it was kind of like for lack of a better term, it was like an igloo. And you went inside the igloo and they had like folding chairs in there, but you were expected to look like this with your, standing, staring up at it like you're in like one of those planetarium domes or something like that. And, but all I could think of to myself is like, what if they had this at the Omni Theater at the Museum of Science in Boston? I would have gone absolutely nuts for that.
Right. That's so cool.
I remember the Omni Theater quite a lot because, the Museum of Science in Boston is a very, very popular place, and as you might expect, for, kids to go to, for schools to go to and stuff like that, and for field trips. And, it's like, the Omni Theater is the biggest, is like, think of like an IMAX, but like not quite wraparound, but like big enough that like, you really get a sense of like height. There is one of the films that we saw the last time I remember being in the Omni Theater was they were doing something like flyovers of Alaska or places like that, and the sense of height that I had in the Omni Theater, just looking down, like, the camera was behind the plane and everything like that, and I'm like, oh god, and I'm desperately holding on to because I'm like 10 years old, I'm desperately holding on to my seat and stuff like that, and I'm like,
right.
So
yeah. There's some really cool things out there that people that I think sometimes they're underappreciated when like a museum does something really cool and people are like, oh yeah, whatever. But then they'll get real excited about a movie, and it's like, sure, you can get excited about a movie. Movies are awesome. I was telling Panda today, I got to see Fellowship of the Ring. Fellowship of the Rings in an IMAX theater. First time. It was awesome. Like I told him, I was sitting in the theater with my mouth wide open. I swear, like several flies could have come and laid eggs in my mouth and then get born, and I'd have a mouthful of maggots. And then they'd all like turn into flies, and then they'd have babies in my mouth. I know, this is so gross, isn't it?
It is.
But yeah. But like I was just blown away by how beautiful that movie is, and I got to see New Zealand, and that is what it's like. It is just that beautiful.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, all that I want to do is wake up fine, tell me that I'm all right, that I ain't gonna die. All that I want is a hole in the ground. You can tell me when it's all right for me to come out. Gonna make you wonder why you even try. Hard times gonna take you down and laugh and cry these lives. I still don't know how I even survive hard times, and I gotta get to rock bottom. This means war.
Says Ocha Pup.
Ocha, what are you doing here? I'm gonna go into Discord.
You go into Discord here. What are you doing
Ocha.
All right, Ocha.
Ocha.
You are derailing our stream. Then again, it's one of my streams, so I derail myself pretty well. So I feel like my derailment.
So Ocha seems to be in an interesting song mood. Ocha's so awesome.
He's the best.
I think he is underappreciated.
Yeah, is he cooked?
Is he cooked?
I don't know. Maybe he did say that he wasn't sure how he would handle finishing what was it?
Frostpunk?
No, Satisfactory.
Oh, Satisfactory.
He wasn't sure how he would handle finishing Satisfactory, and I think this is how he's coping.
Yeah, Ocha definitely seems to be in an interesting song choice mood.
I know.
Yeah.
Please.
But
Ocha, are
Ocha
you
has
trying to tell
some.
us something?
Yeah, Ocha has some good taste.
He does.
Yeah. No, we love Ocha so much.
Yeah.
Like, seriously, I've been friends with Ocha for, gosh, like about a year now.
Mm-hmm.
So before I even started streaming, before he even started streaming, we've been friends.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's kind of nice when you have friends before you start streaming because, they like you because you're you.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. All right.
So all right, let's play the game.
This goes in your hold automatically.
On my hold, okay. So
Right here.
Right here, yes.
And then you have to pick a card from your hold.
Okay, so I will pick a
So
card.
on our first round. Okay.
So my first card is Entertaining.
Right.
And it has a growth of 1 and a cost of 0.
Right.
It does not score because it is a starter card.
Mm-hmm. And so right now he has 2 points that he can use to buy something. Oh, no.
Yeah, I have 2 growth points that I can use to buy, but there's nothing on the field that costs 2.
Yeah,
so
everything's 3, 3, 3, or 5. So my turn.
And 4 for the season cards.
Yeah, although you
memory cards.
You can buy a memory card.
Well,
no, you
can't.
The
cost is 4.
Right,
so.
that's the score. Okay. So I've got another grooming card. Your turn.
Okay, let's see what I can do here. All right, so if I wanted to,
You
I
have
could
3
pay for
points.
something. Yes, I do have 3 points, but am I compelled to buy a card if I have the minimum, or?
You don't have to.
Okay, then I will end my
Hold.
turn.
Yeah.
I will hold.
Like you can save up. Or wait, for the mentor card. Wait, the mentor card. I think you have to use it.
Yeah.
The player who has it must spend it when they. Oh, you have to spend it when you buy a card.
Well, when I buy a card.
Yeah, and you
so
haven't done that yet.
Yeah, that means I don't have to spend. That would be a bit of a flaw, a game flaw. Let's see. Speaking of music, I got American Idiot's 20th on vinyl a few days ago, and it sounds better on a record than in Rock Band. Yeah. Well, sometimes they do it right with remasters and stuff like that.
Wanna be an American Idiot. That album is one of the best albums, I would say, of the time when it came out. It was just early 2000s?
Yeah, like 2000, like 2003, 2004.
Yeah. I mean, that is more like, it's no wonder they made it into a musical.
Yeah.
Well,
concept albums like that are usually very, very good.
Yeah. All right, so I went, so it's your turn.
No, I just went, so it's your turn.
Oh, yeah, so it's my turn. Okay. Sleeping, so I have 3 points. If I want to, I can buy something. Whenever you draw a grooming, draw again. I don't want that. Question mark equals 1 point you have for each memory.
Yeah,
that's a 5 point.
So one of these,
Yeah, that's a good card to have. So
yeah, hence the high cost.
Right. So I'm gonna wait.
Yeah, you're gonna check. Okay.
Yeah.
For lack of a better term. Let's see. All right, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, and I can trade these 3 in for, and the mentor's card goes to you, and I will take the farmer's market card.
Okay. All right. So the farmer's market card says, when drawn, discard
this unless you hold a grooming. Oh.
Unless you hold a grooming.
Yeah.
I think that's for the end of the game. So you can choose one of the other ones. Someone drawn, discard this unless you hold a feeding.
Yep.
So it's going to be a card that you have to have. Like,
yeah.
So either a grooming, This one's for entertaining. This one's for feeding. So at the end of the game, you have to have at least one feeding, entertaining, or grooming card.
All right.
Okay. So it's my turn. I have...
I now want to... 42 years old. I now want to tell the kids to quit playing them Pokemons on my lawn.
Pokemon. Get off my lawn! You know, where I live in the library cave across the street is the cemetery. And it's more like... when I'm, like, get off my lawn mood, it's more like, get that, you know... dead body off my lawn.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so draw a card.
I'm gonna draw. Wait, 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah.
Oh, wait a minute. I screwed up. I can't. I have to. I can't buy and draw a card on the same turn.
Oh, right.
So I can't buy and draw a card on the same turn.
Okay.
So I have to buy that.
Okay. Sleeping. I'm gonna hold off. I want that iron teapot.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, your turn.
Nope. Sorry.
Wait, now you can use it.
I was gonna say now. I hate to disappoint you, honey, but this iron teapot is mine.
Ugh. Cruelty, absolute abject cruelty. So now we put a market card out.
Yep. Put another market card.
Whenever you draw a board, you do not discard an entertaining. So that's useful too. So there's grooming, sleeping, entertaining, and one more.
Grooming, sleeping, entertaining, feeding.
Feeding. So there are certain cards which are called mischief cards. If you pull them from your deck, you have to get rid of either one of a grooming, a sleeping, a feeding, or an entertaining card.
Yeah.
All right, so
we got 5.
5. Okay.
So you can buy a card. You can buy one of the.
I can easily buy a card.
Would you like to buy a memory card, or would you like to buy a? I'm starting to get into it.
Right.
Would you like to buy a market card or a memory card?
Now, let me explain something too. The usefulness of buying an extra feeding or an extra sleeping card is if you get one of those cards that forces you to discard one of them, you don't have to get rid of your own card. You can get rid of an extra card.
Yes.
So it buffers your deck. I'm gonna buy the brush.
The brush.
So I have to use the mentor card. So that goes back to you.
Danke.
That's 1, 2,
Merci.
and 3.
Yep.
All right, that is now mine, and that goes in my discard pile.
Okay,
right.
so I only have 1 right now. So no matter what I do, I have to go to the next. I have to go to the next hand. So.
Right. Okay. We have to put down another one over here.
Oh, I'll put another market card down. Yeah. Fruit.
Okay, so.
Really expensive.
Okay, so Grumpy. So this is a mischief card. So here, I'll hold it up. When drawn, discard this and a sleeping. I have a sleeping, so I have to get rid of both of them. Darn it.
Oh.
Okay.
Ouch. Okay. Bored. I'm bored. When drawn, discard this and an entertaining. I don't have an entertaining.
So you can just discard that one. You are lucky. Okay.
In many ways.
Right.
Wrong.
Feeding clock.
No.
Oh no, wrong one.
Wrong
pile.
Wrong.
Entertaining. I have 2 points now. Okay.
Wrong. You're wrong.
La 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 la.
Grooming. Oh, lucky me. That's 2. Okay. 2, 3, 4. All right, so I can do something.
Yeah,
Do
do you
something
want
with
to?
No, not this turn. Because you can either draw or
Right.
buy. You cannot do both.
Right. Okay, I have feeding. There we go. And so, like, if you look at all the feeding cards, for each character you have, there's a different art drawn. So, like, my feeding card has somebody feeding the little dragon that I'm playing, which is Ginseng.
Yeah.
Entertaining card, that's Ginseng on it. And grooming card, that's Ginseng on it. But Pandas has a picture of Jasmine instead.
See?
So, yeah.
It's cute.
Very cute.
Yeah, okay. You cannot do anything, yes?
I cannot.
Okay.
Unless
so
there's something I want to buy for... Oh, no, I can't, because I already...
You already
picked the
drew.
card.
So, I can see where the strategy starts to take in because, well, no matter what, you're going to be able to do something. I have 4. No matter what, you can do something. So
Yeah.
I will take. Oh, wait a minute.
Was that one?
Actually, 1 second here.
2.
It was just these. It was these 2 and that.
Yeah,
because,
so it's a 3
because you gotta pay. You gotta pay an extra. Well, actually, 4 because
Right.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Oh yes.
So, because there's something else I have to, because you have to have this stuff, and I don't know. Maybe we can look in the rules and see if this is it, because I'm of the belief that when you it says when drawn, which means is that when I pick it up from the memory pile, or is it or what does it mean when drawn? Does that mean when I pick it up from the memory pile?
All right. So in this game, it looks like at the end. Here.
Oh,
So
there it is, buying a memory card, right
well, yeah.
there. Okay, let me see here. Okay. Oh, when you buy a memory card, place it in your discard pile, and deck together to draw a new deck. Okay, so it looks like I just have to put this in. So it looks like I have to put it in the discard pile along with all the other stuff. But it means I get to shuffle my deck.
Yeah, and it stays in your deck. You don't lose the card.
So that's what they mean by draw.
Right.
That's what they mean by drawn.
Right.
Oops.
Okay. All right. Now, the thing you want to remember with this game, the important thing is, can the dog play basketball? Damn dog. Can it play basketball?
Ain't no rule that says a dog can't play.
I know, right? Right? Do I have any dogs on my... Oh, I have this dog.
I believe that reference is what you were going for, did you?
This dog.
Yeah.
So, dog. Can you play basketball? I think that's your answer. I don't know what that means. I do not speak dog. All right, so it's my turn.
Yep, and then and you've got plenty of points now. Let me see, you got
Right.
1, 2, 3, 4. So you can buy a memory card if you so desire.
Yeah, but one thing to remember, it's good to buffer your deck as well.
Mm-hmm.
Because something like this can help prevent you from having to throw out a card.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, I just realized I should not have this out. It should be in my discard deck.
Okie dokie.
Okay. Because I bought it and then it goes immediately into your deck. All right, so 1, 2, 3, 4. I have 4 cards. Are 4 points.
Yep.
So one of the things with this game is, you're playing the
New Dragon Age. Ooh, yeah. This was apparently the game that was make or break for BioWare. If they screwed this up like they screwed up Anthem, dead.
Right. Okay, so it's good to buffer your deck sometimes with these cards. Sometimes you want to hold off on buying the season or these cards. And I'm thinking it might be good to pull one of these. Whenever you draw a board, you do not discard an entertaining, so that is a protection card. So if I had this in my deck and I had a board card, I would not have to throw out my entertaining card.
Yeah.
And then with this one, whenever you draw a feeding card, that means you can draw again. So that means you can draw twice in a turn. I think I'm actually going to draw or purchase the Wind Chime card. Okay, so that's yours.
I'll take that back.
And that's mine. And that's mine. Okay. It is Panda's turn.
Okay, and with a freshly reshuffled deck, I have entertaining.
Okay.
I am entertaining.
You are entertaining.
Yeah.
And I got feeding.
Feeding Frenzy. Remember that game?
No.
Oh, it was one of the PopCap games. You know,
Okay.
when those like internet flash games started to get really popular. Ones that weren't like Newgrounds flash games. Entertaining again.
All right. And feeding again.
Oh, and that one's worth
Yeah.
2. Lucky. And then sleeping.
And you do have 4 points now, so you can think about what you want to buy next.
Yeah, I could definitely buy something next turn.
I can buy something this turn too.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah, you got 4.
Yeah. So let's see. So for my deck, all right. So there's mischief cards: bite, bored, picky, and grumpy. I don't think I have picky, and picky is against the feeding card, so I don't need an extra feeding card.
No.
I could benefit from having an extra sleeping card.
Sleeping.
So I am going to buy an extra sleeping card.
Okie dokie.
Because that could be useful.
Mm-hmm.
So essentially, we are building a deck.
Yeah.
You are entertaining. You are not.
Are
you
not entertained?
Well, good. Well, Angry Joe kept complaining, "Where's the blood?" Another blood. BS. 5 minutes and I was going, blood, smooth. The combat's awesome.
Oh, Angry Joe has been a punchline for so long. Like his critiques are hilariously off base.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
We've been forgetting to reload
to do
that.
Yeah. Well, it's my first time playing, and it's your
third time playing.
Yeah.
And the last time I played it was 2 years ago.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So I'm
Well.
relearning the game.
Do I have 4? I do have 4.
1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah.
I do have 4.
You should put this one back into your deck because that's one that you bought.
Oh, that's what I'm supposed to put back into my deck. Okay, I'll put it at the bottom of my deck.
Okay.
That way that's fair. Okay. Well, I'm thinking of buying the musical instrument card. I could do the fruits because I'm thinking one of the 4, or maybe 2. You know what? To keep you from getting the mentors card, I will get the bed. I will take the bed card, and that goes in.
That goes in discard.
Oh, discard.
Yeah, there you go.
I might as well put the iron teapot in Discord as well.
Right.
Discord. What the heck's the matter with me?
Board. When
no.
drawn, discard this and an entertaining. I don't have an entertaining, so that goes straight in here.
No, actually.
Put in there. Right.
And then sleeping.
Sweeping.
Oh, picky. When drawn, discard this and a feeding. Well, joke's on you, picky.
Oh, nope. That's not what I'm supposed to pick from. That's what I'm supposed to pick from. Entertaining. Okay.
All right. Let's see. Feeding.
All right. Bite. When drawn, discard this and a grooming.
Oh, no.
Darn it.
Rats.
I'm going to have to shuffle my deck anyway.
Okay, so you automatically shuffle when you run out.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because it's a deck building game, essentially. You build your deck.
All my aunts and cousins can do this, and I cannot.
Yeah. Let me see if I could do a good arch. Yep. And of course, the top one flies off, and then
sometimes it's
it's better with like a full deck. This is not a full deck, so
yeah, exactly.
Okay. All right.
All right.
All
right. Feeding.
All right. Bite. Discard this and a grooming. I don't have a grooming because I already discarded a grooming. All right. Your turn, sir.
Not there yet. Okay. Grumpy. Oh, lucky me. Grumpy. When drawn, discard this and a sleeping. Well, I know I get grumpy when I don't get enough sleep.
Grooming.
Okay. Sleeping.
Grumpy. When drawn, discard this and a sleeping. I don't have a sleeping.
Okay.
I can't discard his sleeping, though.
Yeah.
I can't undo what he has done to raise his own Jasmine Dragon.
Okay, I will discard 3 and take
You
this
automatically
sleeping.
have to discard the mentor card when you buy.
Oh, okay.
So leave one of those out, then you give this one to me. There we go.
I thought I could keep it away from you, but nope.
No, you have...
I did it. I kept it last time, because that's my fault for misunderstanding the rule.
Yeah, it says must be spent when buying.
Yes, so I have to say, yep, so I don't have a choice.
Yeah. So I have 3 points. I can buy a feeding card. Oh, we need another one now.
Yep.
Fickle Dragons. Immediately, each player is affected as if they drew Spring, Bite, discard a grooming.
Oh, look at me. I don't have that.
to discard a grooming.
Oh, no, that's Spring. Okay.
We're in Spring.
Spring. I thought that was just me. Because,
so this is not my action. So I had to discard my grooming, and then I add a new one.
Yeah.
Brush. Whenever you draw a grooming, draw again. I didn't draw a grooming. So.
Rats.
But no, if I do draw a grooming, then this card gets used up.
Return this to box and draw a new market card for the tableau.
Okay.
So that's so it can only be played once a game.
Over here. Yes.
Once per game. Okay. Tableau.
There's a grooming.
Tableau.
Le tableau.
Board. When drawn, and discard this in an entertaining. Well, joke's on you.
Okay, wind chime. Whenever you draw a board, do not discard an entertaining. So if I draw a board, I still get to keep this card and discard the other one.
Lucky. Grooming. Oh, whenever you draw a grooming while you hold no grooming, draw again, which means I get to draw again.
Oh, I've been missing that. Yes,
missing your
whenever
ability,
you draw feeding while you hold no feeding, draw again. Oh, we've been missing that part.
You'll draw a feeding right here.
Entertaining.
But
I have 3 spendable points.
Yeah, I have...
Oh, it says... Okay, yeah.
Yep, I have 3 spendable points as well. I think I am going to... well, I can't get the fruit or the musical instrument. But I think I will trade in these 3 for a grooming.
Okay.
A 2-growth grooming.
Nice.
Okay.
Alright, so I have 3 points. Do I want to buy something else?
Oh, we got an ad break in 3 minutes.
Oh, yes. Maybe what we'll do in the ad break is we'll discuss for the people who are subscribed what we made last night.
Yeah.
Okay, so draw so I drew a feeding card.
And now you get to draw again because you don't have one on the field.
Oh my gosh, I have so many cards. And I got a sleeping card.
Okay.
Here, I'm going to move these over.
New one for the tableau. And then another grooming card. Oh, and this one just so happened to have 2 growth as well.
And then you get a charge card.
No, I already had one on the field.
Okay. All right. Let's see. I can buy something. What can I buy?
You got 3, 4, 5, 6. You got 6 points.
Right.
You got 6 growth, so you can buy a lot.
Right. So 1, 2, 3. Yeah. I think you can buy only 1 card a turn, though.
Correct. Yes.
So what I'll probably do.
And you've got to use the mentor's card if you're gonna buy.
Right. I think I'm going to do is I'm going to spend 3 and buy the extra feeding card. And that's yours.
Gimme.
And that goes in my discard pile too.
Okay.
All right. I'm going to keep an eye on this ad break.
Yeah. All right. And, farmer's market just grew. Oh, guess who's got 2 grooming in his hand?
When drawn, discard this unless you hold a grooming.
Yeah.
Okay. So our card decks are not necessarily going to have the same number of cards in it, which is why at some point you may need to shuffle your deck while I may not.
Yeah, exactly. Well, we've been buying cards differently.
Right,
so,
right.
Yeah. We are going on a break in less than 45 seconds.
Right. If none of them have pineapple pizza, it's already the greatest game ever. I'm sorry. You know what? I think of pineapple pizza, and then I think of the fact that there is banana pizza. And I'm like, banana.
I'm going to say something extremely controversial right here, Digi. A couple weeks ago, I had Hawaiian pizza for the very first time. I had pineapple and ham on pizza. And you know what? It was acceptable. If I was offered a Hawaiian pizza, I would not say no. Would I buy it? Probably not.
Right. But I find pineapple to only be acceptable on Hawaiian pizza.
Yes.
I wouldn't put it on any other kind of pizza. I think it's because the pineapple with the ham, I think they're a good combination. A lot of times when people make ham, they will like roast it with pineapple.
Yeah.
Because the acid in the pineapple works really well with the flavor of the ham.
Mm-hmm. Yes. It's the sweet and the salty that works well.
Right. But I wouldn't, nothing else. Like,
Yet.
it doesn't make any sense with sausage to me.
No.
Okay. So I'm picking a card. I've got grooming.
Okay. I tried it. I couldn't get past after the taste of the pineapple. Hey, it's okay.
Yeah.
It's okay.
So, since the ad break's going to start any second, we can take a moment to talk about what we made last night.
Yeah.
So, I've mentioned that I make some of my own recipes, mostly for cookies. But last night, what we made was my own recipe. So most people think of muffins as something sweet. All right, I'm probably going to freak you guys out with this, but I've had friends who tried pizza straight up with pineapple, no ham. No.
That's a no. That's a no. You need that contrast.
Exactly. So, I created my own recipe for a savory muffin. Because, I think, especially in America, a lot of our breakfast foods are sweet. Like cereal, like pancakes, muffins, waffles. And, I'm trying to be good, not overdoing the sweet, especially because I have a sweet tooth. And, I want to make sure I'm taking care of my health. Of course, I wouldn't say these muffins are healthy. They're just savory muffins instead of sweet. So I created my own recipe for cheddar bacon broccoli muffins. And we made some last night. And I think Panda can tell you what he thought of the recipe.
I thought it was great.
This is not a test.
No, it's not a test. No, trust me. I think there are other tests that I hope I've passed since I've been here. But yeah, it was a really, really good savory muffin. I had heard of savory muffins before, and we used to, and it wasn't anything too complicated. We fried up the bacon. We pan-fried the bacon in a cast iron skillet, and we reserved some of the bacon fat, and then sautéed the broccoli in the bacon fat, and then we just
sharp cheddar, sharp white cheddar.
Yeah.
It was Cabot. Cabot's a good brand.
It's a very easy to find cheese.
Yeah.
And and I think the entire recipe was extremely good, especially warm. Like these are muffins that you have to have warm.
Yeah, they're okay when they're cold. And any specific brand, yeah. So I've used many brands, but I think Cabot is a really good brand.
Yes.
I think they're pretty high quality in terms of for a non-fancy schmancy cheese. I really think Cabot is a good company to go with.
Yeah, where I live, you can find blocks upon blocks of that stuff super easy at the local supermarket.
And the one I used was actually pre-shredded too, so that made it a little bit easier.
Yeah, I think, and but like I said, these kind of savory muffins like that, you've got to have them warm.
Right.
Because if you don't, the texture just doesn't really work.
Yeah, cold. It's okay. But Panda ate 2 this morning.
Yeah.
So he would not have eaten 2 if he didn't like them, I think.
Yeah, exactly.
And if he didn't like them, I would not be mad at him for it.
Yeah.
Nobody should eat something they don't like.
I have to trust my girlfriend's cooking skills.
Right. Maybe what I can do later on is I can post a copy of the recipe. I don't mind sharing.
Yeah.
I'm not one of those mean people who is like, no, you can't have my recipe. I hate it when people gatekeep recipes. I'm like, no, just share it. Let other people enjoy the fun.
Yeah, because otherwise, I don't really believe in that. Especially since my line of work, I have to share what I know. I don't have a choice.
Right.
So, and I figure, well, that should extend to my recipes as well. I want all of my recipes to be open source, I guess you could say.
Right.
I have to trust my girlfriend's cooking skills. If she doesn't cook like a Kane Tendo, you're fine.
Yeah, I know how to make rice. And those who hi Ocha. I guess you just finished Satisfactory. So yeah. Anybody who has ever watched Ranma would know that Akane Tendo is a terrifying cook.
Yeah.
Wow, yes, you finished Satisfactory. Woo! Yay! Nice job.
Yay!
Good job, Ocha.
Way to go! I thought Satisfactory was one of those games that basically had no end, but I guess not. Well, I feel like I have been testing my V-Fable fam with Frostpunk between Ocha and Aspen. And I saved the kittens and puppies. Yay!
Yay! All the kittens and all the puppies.
It's really going to be sad when I go back to Satisfactory and I have to take the Fixmas tree down.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it sucks. Yeah. But actually, before I left, I took my Christmas lights down in my room. Both sets.
Which reminds me. Dragon lights. I have lights up in my room. I don't know if that will show up on screen. And I knock over my paper shredder. Because, as a former therapist, you guys, I believe in confidentiality.
Exactly. So I don't know if it's showing up here, but I still like it because, the white lights work all year round.
Yes.
I have those, and I told you about these when you were exploring this. I have those RGB strips, those adhesive RGB strips. If I could find another power thing for it, I would have given you mine because I bought like 100 feet because I didn't have a choice. and by the time I was done making the one thing around my far window, and you'll see it when you come visit the den. I was like, hey, anything else other than that is like way too much, and it wouldn't really work.
Right.
But the good news is I can set them depending on the season. So for now, I set mine for like an ice white.
Nice. Very pretty.
Yeah.
Speaking of puppies and kittens, I shared with Panda recently, there is a video called INFP Squid Game. I made him watch it, but
made him watch it.
I was like, you should watch this, and he was, I didn't like, at Dragon Point, being like, you must watch.
Yes, and I'm sitting there like, yes, honey.
Yeah, but my Myers-Briggs is INFP, so it's like, you need to watch this. You will understand everything about me. And it's pretty funny. I highly recommend it, but there's a lot about kittens and puppies in that. That's my personality. I will protect the kittens and puppies no matter what. Okay.
I think we're back.
Is it my turn or your turn?
I believe it is your turn.
Okay. So I have 4 points here.
Ocha asks, how has the stream been?
It's been great. Yeah. So I purposely bought an extra feeding card because I know that my character has a little boost there.
Yeah.
So I am going to buy the fruit card.
Fruit.
I'm being strategic here.
Mm-hmm.
All right,
Actually,
so that is for... So, like, you know, if Panda wanted to... Oh,
Brick.
immediately, each player may shuffle their deck and discard pile together.
I just did.
Return this to the box and draw a new market card for the tableau.
Okay, so this is the other once per game thing. Ah,
It flew off.
careful.
There. Okay. Merci beaucoup, monsieur.
Yeah, oh,
Merci
avec,
buckets.
avec plaisir.
Ah, merci. Tu es très gentil. Si, je parle un peu français, mais c'est très mal. My pronunciation's terrible in some ways. I also can't roll my R's.
Really? You can't... No.
No.
You can't do the...
Which is crazy because I've studied Spanish. And that's pretty well used in Spanish.
Yeah. It's not a roll of the R in the same way in Spanish, because Spanish has a like that, whereas the you almost kind of
The guttural one, the
guttural, almost like a haktui,
yeah, it's I don't know. Yeah, when I had to have speech therapy at one point in my life.
Okay.
So, and I also have kind of a smallish mouth.
Mm-hmm.
My tongue is a little too big for my mouth. It's kind of weird, like the way how my mouth works. But yeah, so all right. I blame my English class for this, but whenever I hear about a supernatural market, I hear goblins in my head going, "Come by, come by." All right, so it's your turn.
Okay.
Or no. I didn't pull. No, I spent. Okay, it's your turn.
Yeah, you spent, and then...
And right now, you have a lot that you can spend.
I could, yeah.
You have
2, 4, 6, 7, 8. Wow.
You can buy.
2, because I have to spend this. 1, 2, 4, and then I'm gonna use the musical instrument.
Okay, and that goes in discard.
Whenever you draw an entertaining, draw again. Oh, and I gotta get one for the tableau. So we're raising the army, and we still have the other stuff on the.
So sometimes it's strategic in this game to focus on building your deck first. Goblin market. So, all right, let's go. Feeding. Whenever you draw a feeding card and you hold no feeding, draw again. Yay!
There you go.
And that was a 2-point feeding card.
And yep. So let's see here. All right. So now, entertaining.
So you can buy.
I could.
Oh,
I
well,
can't
you can't now, but you could next time.
I could.
Yeah. All right. So I have 4 points here, and all of these are 3 points right now.
Yes.
I'm probably going to draw another feeding because that will give me a lot of fuel to use my stuff here. So I have to give up that one, and this is
Thank
2,
you.
so that makes 3. So I'll take the feeding. I'll put down another iron teapot. That's a good card.
2, 4. Thanks.
How dare!
Okay.
I think there's only 2 iron teapots, so.
As Spooky Cat Kevin often says, "Oh dare!"
How dare! So cruel. Okay, I have to choose a card. Oh, feeding. I get to choose another one. See? The way how you stack your cards. Whenever you draw a feeding, draw again. So if I draw another feeding, I'll draw again.
As long as that's on the field, yes.
Yes.
Okay. Are you done?
I am.
Is that your turn? Okay.
'Tis your turn, sir.
Sleeping.
And actually, you have enough that you can buy something again.
I could.
All right. So, wait. So 3 points. Whenever you draw a board card. I don't think I have board cards. I think my deck... So, the mischief cards are Bite, Bored, Picky, and Grumpy.
Yes.
I don't have Picky. I think it's because my character is based on feeding. Bite, I think he doesn't have in his deck because his character is based on grooming.
Yeah.
If I remember what they said earlier, this is Panda's first time too.
Yes.
kind of raising an army. You're in the army now, not behind the plow. You'll never get rich.
You son of a bitch. You're in the army now. You always have your chow. You'll never get rich. I know. But we won't need any money in the army.
Yes. And we're just raising dragons. Yeah. So this is my 3rd time playing it.
Yeah. We are up to 7 viewers.
Yeah. Hi, everyone.
Holy moly.
It's always good to have you here.
Yeah.
Oh, you know what? I forgot to do a shout out for Ocha. Let me do shout out for Ocha. That is backslash shout out. Yes. Oh. Yes, I apologize. I'm not always good at... Now, I used to be really bad at remembering to raid. Mm-hmm. I'm good at that now. What I'm very bad at remembering now is shout-outs.
I've actually never done it.
I feel really bad for people when I don't shout them out because sometimes people have raided me and I love them so much and I just forget because sometimes it happens in the moment. I'm like, oh my God, there's a raid.
Yeah. I rarely get raided. I think you're the only one that ever raids me, Aspen.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's crazy. Why aren't people raiding Panda?
I know.
He's freaking awesome. He plays cool, like, classic video games that... And I think that's kind of what's awesome about your content is that you will play games that are classics of, like, gaming history. Mm-hmm. You know?
Well, ones that are mostly personal to me, I think.
Right.
So.
Okay. So I have I have 3 cards.
3 points. Yep.
3 points. And I can buy some things here. Mm-hmm. So I was thinking of possibly buying this one. Mm-hmm. So when you draw, it's a book card. Mm-hmm. Me being all about books. Mm-hmm. All right. And then when you draw a board card, discard this card. Mm-hmm. So I think that I think board cards I do have.
Yeah.
So I'm going to buy this. So
Thank
there
you
you go.
Danke.
Okay.
Yeah, my classic games. The classic games that I play, it's like, I try to. Now, there are times where I will get a little experimental, where, hey, Mystic, how you doing?
Hey, Mystic, how are you? You missed the announcement, but I think you already know.
Yeah, exactly. So
Mystic is definitely somebody who's suspected.
Mystic is in the know.
Oh, thank you for the sub, Mystic.
That's 10.
That's 10. That is 10 subs. Oh my freaking God. Thank you so much. That's awesome. Thank you.
Holy shit.
Yeah. This is like maximum subs for me. That's awesome.
Yeah,
Thank you so much.
Look at all of this. He says, what announcement?
What announcement? La 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 la. Here. You can see our hands together.
Yes.
La 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 la. We're dating.
We're dating, yes.
Yes.
Oop. Am I going to be on camera?
No, that's okay.
No,
you just kissed my hand.
Yeah.
You did a magic number. Yay!
Yes.
Yay! It's like when you go to the grocery store and like, you're 100th customer, you get a free trip to,
Schenectady.
Or like, you get a free trip to Arizona in the middle of winter.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, you did the magic number of 10. Whee! Okay. All right,
okay,
gloves.
So, gloves, okay.
Whenever you draw a bite, do not discard a grooming. All right, so it is your turn. You can buy something.
See, I've got a lot of stuff in here. I got a lot of options in here that will benefit me. And I think the first thing I will do is... Oh, wait a minute. I have to burn everything. But you know what? I will burn everything because I don't have a choice. Because this is really going to help me. It's brush. Whenever you draw a grooming card, draw again, which I already have a lot of grooming cards.
Yeah, and if he buys that one, I could strategically buy that.
But not right now.
Yeah, but not right now, because I'll only have 1 point. Mm-hmm. Okay, 2 feeding. Oh, wait. When you draw a feeding...
Draw again.
Draw again.
And you don't have any on the field.
Oh, nice. I got a 2-point feeding and a 2-point sleeping, so I can buy something next time easy.
Oh, picky. Discard this and a feeding. Well, guess what? I don't have that.
Right.
But I am, but that grooming card is very much, something I'm gonna miss.
I just realized I'm missing some of these things. If I could link you to like all the 10 pinball Sesame Street vid, congrats.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9,
Yeah,
10,
Mystic's like,
11,
yeah, I
12.
knew you were a couple and all.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a poorly kept secret.
Yeah.
So I've been forgetting. I have these cards, and when I get a feeding, I can draw another card. I forgot to do that.
Mm-hmm.
When I get a grooming, I can draw another card. And I haven't drawn a board yet, so I'm going to put that here.
Okay.
But I've been forgetting. So next time I draw a grooming or a feeding, I'll draw a second one. Okay. So you just purchased.
Yes, I purchased.
Okay.
Actually, I
Or is
drew and I had to discard because I drew picky.
Right, okay. So I picked a board card. When drawn, discard this and an entertaining. I do not have an entertaining down.
Okay. So, no, you do not.
But I also says whenever you draw a board, do not discard and entertain. Either way.
So you're not affected by it
Yeah.
either way.
Yeah.
All
So,
right.
but I think I have to take this back and put it back in there.
Yeah. Okay.
Oops. Sorry.
It's okay. It happens.
Yes.
As long as nobody flips the table.
Wah!
Grooming. Oh, well, when I draw grooming, because I held no grooming, I draw again. And I get a feeding.
Ooh, nice. Okay.
Feeding
So my turn.
time.
I can purchase.
Mm-hmm. You have a lot of purchasing power right now.
Whenever you draw a picky, do not discard a feeding. That is useful as I have been buffering my deck with feeding cards.
Yeah.
I might do that. So that's 3.
Yeah.
So you get that. I'll take that, and I'll take that.
Open another one. Necklace. Whenever you draw a bite, discard this card.
Right. That could be a good one for you too, because
Yeah.
a bite is related to grooming.
Yeah, exactly. But I think I've got a better one. Get the gloves.
Yeah.
Because whenever
But
you
it's
whenever you discard a bite, do not discard a grooming card.
Right.
And that's 3. And then bam.
So we're playing a little bit kindly, I think.
Yeah. I started playing 2 very different games today. Oh, which games are
cool.
those, Mystic? Do tell. Did you take advantage of the Steam sale to get these games?
Yes. I'm good. Pick my card.
Pick a card while we wait for Mystic to tell
so I have
us.
3. Wait, I have 3 points.
Mm-hmm.
I might want to take the fruit. Well, I already have a fruit.
Mm-hmm.
I might want to
Do
take
they
another
do
fruit.
abilities stack?
I don't think they do, because when you use it, when you pick the card, you have to get rid of it.
Yeah.
So if I have 2 fruit cards, that can just buffer me.
Yeah.
Nope, they were on my PS5. Oh,
That's right. You just got your PS5 for Christmas.
nice. I'm gonna buy the second fruit.
Or in your case, Yule.
Yeah. So that goes to you.
Thank you.
That goes to me. And that goes
This
to
thing's
me.
getting passed around more than the potatoes at Thanksgiving.
Right. Right.
Okay. Let's see what I got
Okay.
here. I don't have much of a choice, so there's a grooming card, but I hold no grooming. Grumpy, when drawn, discard this and is sleeping. Well, guess what?
You're not sleeping.
No, I'm not. Not until later.
All right. So bite. When this is drawn, discard a grooming. I don't have.
Okay, so let's see here.
Oh no, that's the wrong one.
That's the wrong
That
one.
pie. You're doing what I was doing.
Yep, exactly.
Sleeping.
Well, I can't do anything because I just drew.
Right.
So
Grumpy. Discard. Nah. Oh my gosh, I'm getting all my mischief cards.
bed. Whenever you draw sleeping, draw again.
Okay.
I can't do
So
it. Well,
when you draw another sleeping, that's like these cards.
yeah, exactly.
All right.
Let me see. Started playing Infinity Nikki for the first time, which I actually quite enjoy the collection of elements as well as the clothing design elements. And then I spent a few hours playing Mass Effect Legendary Edition. Nice.
Cool. Very different games. I actually have Legendary Nikki or Infinity Nikki on my computer. I haven't played it yet.
Yeah, I have. I remember playing Mass Effect when it was new back in 2007.
Right. So I picked a Grooming, and I have this one. Whenever you draw a Grooming, draw again. So I'm going to put that away because I've used it, and I'll draw another card.
Your big thing of cards all of a sudden becoming much slimmer,
more useful.
much more slimmer.
True. Right.
All right.
Your turn, love.
I have 3. I have 3 points I can burn if I want to. I'm gonna burn them on another grooming card.
Mm-hmm.
That way, I have plenty of grooming cards to take milk. draw Picky, you get to discard this card.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, my turn is over.
Now, do I want to buy something?
Mm-hmm.
Is there anything for... I can get an entertaining card.
Mm-hmm.
I can get a necklace.
Mm-hmm.
Or I can get a milk. I can't get a bed. I'm just going to pull.
Okay.
Sleeping. Okay. So I have 4 points. All right.
Okay, I thought you had a sleeping card. I thought you had a sleeping buff. Okay.
No, I don't.
Bored. When drawn, discard this in an entertaining. Well, nope.
Okay. All right, so I have 4 points now.
Mm-hmm. This card, yep.
I will buy the bed card.
Okay.
You have a bed card. Now I have a bed card. We're on equal footing on that regard.
Okay, wow, the tableau is getting pretty empty in the haven't used any of the any of the season cards.
Right. We might want to buy another season card soon.
Yeah, exactly.
That might be a good idea, so we can move on to the next season.
Yeah. Well,
okay.
I have a feeling the crescendo is going to come very quickly for us.
Right. Entertaining.
Yeah. There's not much I can do here. Entertaining.
Stop being Mary. I'm not dating Mary. Sleeping.
The joke that everybody had was that, oh, Mary's ace. He has to be because actually compiling all.
Garrus is my husband in Mass Effect. I've never played Mass Effect.
Mm.
Oh wait,
Like,
I will allow this.
fuck Saren.
I don't mind the F word.
I know, just assembling the fuck Saren, not in that way squad.
Yeah. Compiling your thoughts and first impressions on both games. People seem to really like Infinity Nikki.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing that I've been finding is, like, a lot of times, like, games like that are seen as very girly, but a lot of guys are playing it. Okay.
And I'm going to go for the necklace.
All right. Musical instrument.
Musical.
So I have 3 points. Might as well buy something. Here.
You can buy a few things.
Pour vous.
Ah.
And I will buy the musical instrument.
All right.
So I can play the piano or the
There's
guitar.
only one tableau card left.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Oh my goodness. Speaking of which,
So
oh,
far.
look at that. An iron teapot.
Okay, so the shared tag is Necro Dragon Game Diaries. And each game has their own threads. I think that's really cool.
Nice. I like that. I like that.
And it's a nice way to, what's the word? Make it archivable.
Yeah.
So people can look it up later. Okay. My turn, right?
Yes, it's your turn. Your turn, dear.
Okay, feeding. Whenever you draw a feeding, while you hold no feeding, draw again.
Yeah.
And I also have another one. You draw a feeding, draw again.
Yeah.
So I can draw 2 cards.
Very girly, but I was playing the Love Nikki mobile game a few years ago, and having a full-on 3D adventure feels like it's more worth spending the money on for in-game purchases.
Mm-hmm.
And Mystic says exactly for the game diary idea.
1, 2. Okay. And then I got a bite.
Oh.
When drawn, discard this and a grooming.
Oh.
All right.
Okay, let's see what I can do here. I got a two-pointer in grooming.
And you have enough. You have 4 points. You can buy next time.
Yes, on my next turn.
Right. Wind chime. Whenever you draw a board, do not discard an entertaining. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Your turn, monsieur.
Okay, yes, my dear. You know, I'm gonna do this, and I'm gonna buy the entertaining card.
Okay, you have to give me the mentor card.
Yes, that's right.
All right.
What you think? What you think? I'm gonna play fair and square?
I mean, I can buy the milk card.
Yeah, you can.
Which is, but
That's for picky.
yeah, I'm a feeding. A picky is not a card that I get though,
Yeah.
because that's not part of my mischief. Because I'm a hungry,
Yes,
I'm a
yes.
hungry ginseng. So I'm not going to buy that. I'm going to have to wait.
Mm-hmm.
Bed. Whenever you draw the sleeping. Now this is the thing that starts happening too. you start drawing these extra cards you've buffered yourself with, and you don't get spending points.
Yeah.
But pretty soon, it's not going to matter.
Oh, a picky, when drawn, discard this and a feeding. Well, joke's on you.
Okay.
Na-na-na-na-na-na-na-na-na-na-na-na-na.
Grooming.
Joke's on you.
All right.
Let's see what we can do here. Sleeping.
Okay. Sweepy ones. So wait, I have 1, 2, 3. Now all these cards left, these are all 3 except for the milk.
Yeah.
But I don't get picky cards. So, it might be good for me to... And these 2 are related to drawing grumpy cards.
Yes.
So when you draw a grumpy, you discard this, or whenever you draw a grumpy, just do not discard a sleeping.
Yes.
So...
Which will it be?
At this point, I am going to... Or I combine entertaining. You know, I'm going to just fill in my deck.
Okay. Well, we don't have much of a... we don't have much of an option to play stuff now, so...
Okay.
Do I get...
Alright. I don't have my living space in order to adequately set up my streaming space yet. Text for next year. So I'm archiving my thoughts instead of being able to record gameplay. Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay. Well,
I mean, at the very least, you can, it can be kind of like a, blog.
Yeah, exactly.
Quote, unquote.
That's kind of what I did before I started streaming. Your turn, my dear.
Yes. Okay. So, I can't buy anything. There's my sleeping. Sweepy card. Look how cute. So, that one is named Chamomile.
Grooming, and since I don't have one on field, I can go again.
All
1,
right.
2, 3, 4, 5.
All right. Grumpy. When drawn, discard this and a sleeping.
Oh.
Oh, I forgot last time to
you
draw
have
my
bed.
sleeping.
Oh.
Well, let's just do this way. I'll use it next time.
Okay. All right. 1, 2, 3. Yep. 3 and 4, and then we are going to get butterflies.
All right. So we discard the last one. We're switching seasons, guys.
Big moment.
Yes. So we have our 3. No, those are winter. Our 3. These are summer cards. So Young Love, Travels, and Craft. Oh, how apropos that we got.
3, 4, and 5. Okay.
So these, the spring ones are different from the summer ones. When drawn, discard this unless you hold a sleeping. Draw again. Travels doesn't have anything, but it has a lot of points. It's worth a lot. Craft, when drawn, discard this, but has 5 points. So 3, 4, or 5 points.
Yeah. But it doesn't look like it does much because of the simple fact that it's like, well, you draw it, aren't you?
Right.
They only count the stuff that's on the field, right?
I think with the seasons. Oh gosh, I don't know. Let me double check. The game ends when only 1 memory card remains in the winter season. Players tally up the points on cards in their deck.
Oh, in their deck. Okay.
Yeah, and the player with the most post wins.
Okay.
Or points wins. Sorry for the science on my end. I just have to get a bit of snooze. Yeah, no, that's totally understand me.
Hey, we're getting old here. We're getting older. We gotta, save up all our energy for staying up to see the ball drop tomorrow night.
Yes. Okay, so it is my turn.
Yes, it's your turn, honey.
Okay, a feeding. Neither one of those relate to feeding.
Okay.
Oh no, wait, but I do draw another one because I have a feeding card.
Yes.
Feeding.
And you get a
Okay,
second
so I have 2 feedings. Okay. Alright, so it's interesting here too because these have different costs now. This has the highest points.
But the lowest cost. But it also means...
you have to discard it right away. Wait. Why am I picking up another card? Is it my turn?
Yeah, it's your turn.
Okay. Hold on, Fizz, I guess. I have not. It's at the local theater.
It is.
I don't know. Maybe we should go see it tomorrow?
Maybe we should.
Yeah.
But we were gonna watch Lord of the Rings.
Yes. Let's watch Lord of the Rings. I haven't watched the first two of
Yeah.
Sonic, so
Yeah.
let's watch more Lord of the Rings.
We meant to watch more. We meant to watch all of Fellowship of the Ring Extended Edition today.
Yes.
And we kept on getting distracted.
Yeah, and Human Mother came over, and we had a lovely conversation with her.
Yes, it was very nice to meet Human Mother.
Yeah, she's a sweetheart.
She is. I like them very, very much. Are you done, honey?
'Tis true, yes.
Okay. Gloves. Whenever you draw a bite, do not discard grooming.
Okay.
It's
So
not
I'm
what-
going
It's
to.
not what I need right now.
I am going to make a purchase.
Mhm.
I'm going to buy travels.
Ah, that's what I was hoping to be able to
2,
get.
3, 4,
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10,
11,
12.
12. Okay, your turn.
All right. Well,
You have 4 points you could spend. And, you know.
I need to. Ooh.
There's not much that's protecting from Grumpy right now in either of our
Yeah.
decks, so those are worthwhile.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll buy the incense. And this is all. And when we tally up our point. Oops. Let's do that. When we tally up our points at the end of the game, it's not what's in our discard pile. It's what's in our.
I think so.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hey, swimming link.
Oh, hey, swimming! Yes.
Still
As
need
much
one
as you
second.
two need to see Sonic, she needs to watch Lord of the Rings. That's a priority. Now, Given, I'm going to tell you this. I watch Lord of the Rings every year.
Mhm.
It's an annual thing I do.
Mhm.
I did not do it this year, though, so it's good to have Panda here.
Yeah, we got to squeeze it all in. We got to squeeze it all in tomorrow.
Right. But the reason I do that is so Human Father, who passed away many years ago, loved Lord of the Rings, and he spent time in New Zealand. And so I watch it every year in memory of him, because it's like I'm enjoying it with him.
Yeah.
So now I'm enjoying it with Panda, and that has a lot of meaning for me. So, you know, because then I get to share something that's very meaningful to me with somebody I really care about.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I hope you're doing well swimming. I actually, you know, when I was watching you play that game on, I think it was on Christmas Eve, maybe? A few days ago, the one where you find the pictures of the different, in the, what was it called? Because what I did is I was playing it, and then Panda called. It was on Christmas Day, I think.
Yeah, that was on Christmas Day.
Yeah,
Christmas
it was
night.
Find It Christmas, I
Yeah.
think. And so Panda and I were playing it together over Discord.
Yeah, exactly. And,
Yeah.
You know, it was really good because I'd had a bit of a rough day.
Yeah.
You know, just like with overstimulation and stuff like that, people just being entirely too loud in my family and stuff like that, and I was cooked. And Aspen will tell you, she could tell I was cooked just how I was.
His voice is quite tired.
Yeah.
I just drew the sleeping, right?
Yeah.
So I actually have whenever you draw sleeping, draw again.
Ah,
Okay.
rats.
And whenever you draw feeding, draw again.
Mm-hmm. Ah.
And whenever you draw board, do not discard an entertaining. Okay.
Okay. Is that your turn?
Yes.
Okay. Grumpy. When drawn, discard this and a sleeping. Ah, rats. Oh, no. Now I had at least 1 point. Now I've got none.
Oh. Okay, well, I have plenty enough to buy stuff. Milk is useless to me because I don't have picky cards.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe what I'll do is I'll buy the sugary treat.
Mm-hmm.
So that's for you.
Yep.
That goes there, and that goes there.
Okay.
Yeah, the end of this game is going to go really fast. I think,
Yeah,
because we
exactly.
focus mostly on card building or
Mhm.
deck building.
Let's see, entertaining. Oh, whenever you draw an entertaining, draw again because I have the musical instrument card.
Nice.
Iron teapot.
All right. Okay, my turn. I'm not buying the milk. Whenever you draw grooming, draw again.
Okay. farmer's market. When drawn, discard this unless you hold a grooming. Do I hold a grooming?
I don't think you
do.
hold. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Shiznit. All right. So, sleeping.
Sleeping.
So one here. These are not the. These are the spending cards.
Sleeping, like I was yesterday.
Yes.
Speaking of sleeping, there you go.
Okay. I have 3 points.
Oh, wait a minute. I have the bed card, so I get to draw again.
Yes.
I have a grooming
grooming
card, even though I
card.
wasn't in my car. It wasn't in my thing.
And another sleeping.
Yeah.
So when you use your booster card that lets you draw again, you know you have to put it away in the.
Now I know.
Yeah.
Okay. So you're sleeping, and then that was the ability card with my.
And you had an entertaining as well, right? No.
Yes?
No.
Oh wait, I did the entertaining last turn.
Yeah.
I did the entertaining last turn.
Okay.
That's what I get for covering up my cards like that.
Yeah, but it gets a little long.
Yeah.
Okay.
Long in
So
the tooth.
I have 3 points.
Mhm.
I'm gonna buy this baby.
Oh, the craft card. Okay.
Yeah, because the milk is not useful to me.
Mhm.
And then we throw
Yep. Oh, the young love is gone.
love.
It's always young
Yes,
love.
oh, young love. Lovey, lovey, lovey. Oh my god, we're being total dorks.
How obnoxious... That was kind of something we were talking about. How obnoxious are we going to be on stream?
Yeah. How obnoxious are we going to be? I don't know. I guess we'll just be as obnoxious as we feel like being. All right.
While staying within Twitch TOS.
Yes. There's not going to be anything awful. Okay. Sunset,
Whoa!
Autumn Harvest. And see, these are getting more expensive as you go through the seasons, too. These all cost 7. So Sunset, when drawn, you may discard an item you hold to draw 2 cards, then discard Sunset. Autumn Harvest. When drawn, you may discard a growth card you hold to draw 3 cards.
Then discard Autumn Harvest.
And then Fall Festival is just, that's worth 6.
Yeah. So, let me see. I just went, right? Or no,
I just bought.
No, you just bought.
I just purchased. So at this point, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. You actually could buy something next turn. Yes. I cannot.
Yeah.
Or you can buy the milk.
I could.
You need it. Musical instrument whenever you draw an entertaining draw.
Panda asking, yeah, nothing much, just loving lovers, loving love. Nice MST3K reference.
Yeah. Loving lovers, loving love. That's cute.
I think I will buy Fall Festival.
Okay.
So 1, 2, 4, 6, 7.
Yes.
Actually, 7.
Okay.
And that way.
All right, and I get the mentor card, and you take all those and put them in your discard deck.
Oh, yes, that's right.
Okay.
Am I getting tired, honey? I think I might be.
Yeah.
Can't
It's
relate,
okay.
lol.
Can't
Gotta give
relate.
the studio behind Santa Claus some credit for doing something new with the Santa mythos.
Yeah. Sure. I could say that. Feeding clock. Whenever you draw a pick, you do not discard a feeding. I am pulling all my, helpful cards. Those will pay off eventually. I know they will.
All right, let me see. Yeah. Okay. Bored. When drawn, discard this in an entertaining. Well, do I have it? No, I don't. Okay.
Okay. Feeding. All right, and I have a feeding card.
Yep.
So I get to draw another card. So I've got a feeding and an entertaining since.
Bit of a
4
hint.
purchase points.
Gonna alternate between this and Raw's final episode on the USA Network.
Oh, no problem.
At least for a few years. They'll come back to USA Network. They always do.
Yeah, true. Or if it's not Raw, it's going to be another WWE show.
Yeah, exactly. So
how many shows do they have now?
They've got Raw, they've got SmackDown, they have NXT.
Uh-huh.
Those have been their big 3 for a while. And
right.
I don't remember the last one. Oh, SmackDown's on USA. Oh, okay.
Oh, okay.
Let's see what I got here. Feeding. No? Okay.
And that's, I can't, that card is useless to me, so I'm not buying it.
Yeah, exactly.
So, book. When you draw a board card, discard this card.
Book.
You know, I forgot to use my... Okay, I forgot to use the...
clock.
Yeah. I will... I'm so bad at remembering those.
Okay.
I also do an entertaining. I was supposed to draw again.
I could use... You know what? I could use the extra points, so I am going to... Oh, this ties into my iron teapot things. Okay, so the only things left on the field to get
are season
cards.
Yeah.
And
board. When drawn, discard this in entertaining. When you draw a board card, discard this card.
Mm-hmm.
When drawn, discard this in an entertaining.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Okay. Well, you get to shuffle your deck.
Yes. La 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 la. Nah, yeah, it doesn't work well unless it's more like at least 40 cards, I think.
Well, it also depends, I think, on the texture of the back of the cards. Like old bicycle playing cards, that they felt like a lot more matte than they were glossy. That usually works better.
Right.
Brush.
Okay. Fruit. Whenever you draw a feeding, draw again. I need to remember to use these darn cards. Okay. Oh, I just realized I drew a board and I discarded an entertaining, but I have the wind chime. I need to remember things.
Necklace, okay.
I'm too distracted by love. Okay.
So great.
We're dorks.
We're dorks.
Dorks in love. Or the Korean heart.
Yeah, the Korean.
That one's easier.
Yeah, much easier.
All right, is it my turn?
Yes, it is. But I was also thinking like in Spy Family.
Oh, yeah. Oh wait, lower. Lower. Yeah, that's when you put this out and like, you know that you have somebody who loves you when they can do the other half.
Big dorks. Big dorks. Those guys are dorks. Yes, but they're my dorks.
Yes. All right, so I picked a grooming. Whenever you draw a grooming, draw again. Okay. Travels. There's nothing of value from that.
No, it's worth 4.
Well, you buy it for 4.
Oh, no, on the bottom.
Oh, yeah, it's worth 4 points.
Yeah.
So this is when these things start mattering. Mm-hmm. You know, the nice thing about this is I don't ever have to discard it because it has nothing on the bottom.
No conditions.
No conditions. So this will go, I will tuck this over here.
Okay. When drawn, discard this unless you also hold a grooming, which I do not have. All those grooming cards, and now they do me no good.
Right. All right, here. Bite. When drawn, discard this and a grooming.
One right there.
Oh, yes. I have a note. Wait a moment. Oh, dear.
Pause.
I forgot to talk to... Pause. I'm sorry. We post.
No conditions. If that's an error, bank error in your favor. Here's a hint on how badly the New Day is getting hammered. They're trying to speak in Chicago, and they're just getting totally drowned out, yes?
All right, I'm waiting to hear from somebody from Balance of 7. But I forgot to request that we postpone our meeting, especially because we're in the middle of holidays.
Yeah. That's right, you had to.
Don't discard this unless you hold feeding. Why did I put it? Okay, it should be over there.
Oh yeah, worse than Dominic. Oh God, this is bad. Bed and another buff card.
All right. Oh, no. This one wasn't mine. This is the discarded one.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh.
Okay.
Can't do anything.
My turn. So
I'm not getting any points. So.
Right. This is when it gets kind of tricky. When drawn, discard this. That's fine. Okay. All right. Good. Okay.
Well, how fortuitous.
I cannot type very well with gloves on. Unless they're fingerless gloves.
Yeah. Hobo gloves, as I like to call them.
It doesn't help that after Kofi's mom left him, he posted more or less her blocked out of the family pics. Chicago fans, no wrestling is fake, but man, do we get into the fake.
Yeah.
You know, I remember when Kofi first started in the WWE.
Yeah.
He was he was always very likable.
Yeah.
I've always found Kofi extremely likable.
Did you take your turn?
No, I didn't.
Okay.
Oh, no, I did. I got
you did?
to pick
Okay.
the craft
Yeah, you got
card.
the craft card.
Craft
yeah.
card.
Bored. When you discard this and entertaining, I do not believe I have that. Yep. Okay.
Okay. My turn. Entertaining. Whenever you draw an entertaining, draw again. Sleeping.
It's not right.
Do I have anything to do with sleeping? Entertaining, feeding. No, I don't.
It should have been me, not him. It's not fair. You know that one?
No.
Oh, it's from the Yu-Gi-Oh dub. I don't remember the context. But anytime anybody sees like an anime character getting busy with another.
Oh.
Like for example, I saw that plenty in Chainsaw Man when Himeno was trying to get busy with Denji. The crowds have been letting Woods and Kingston have it ever since they did what they did to Big E. As well they should. This was something no one wanted. It just shows that WWE has not changed and will never change.
I have 6 points. I can't buy any of those. So
You're close.
I'm close. All right, so I picked a feeding card. I get to draw another feeding card because I have a feeding card. Whenever you draw a feeding, draw again. So I can draw another one.
Did you get one with you have one with a sleeping ability?
Sleeping? Sleeping's right there.
Because that was what you this was the one you just drew.
Oh, yeah. No, I have nothing here with the sleeping. But after drawing that,
And the bed, yes.
I get a bed.
Yeah, okay. Let's see here. Oh, Fall Festival. Oh, boy, that's worth 7.
So that stays in your deck. So I always put those over here to the side. Like, even stack it under my character card just because I know it's going to be used. Okay.
How about that?
Did you just go?
Yes, that was my turn.
Okay. I picked a sleeping. Whenever you draw a sleeping, draw again. And a grumpy. When drawn, discard this and a sleeping. Okay, whatever.
0.
Whatever.
0-sum game.
Right.
Musical instruments. Whenever you draw an entertaining, draw again.
Okay. I just realized I have plenty enough to buy another of the season cards.
Yeah, you can buy a season card.
So I have 2, 4, 5, 6, 7. So let's take those. That one's for you.
Thank you, honey.
All right. Do I want the Autumn Harvest or Sunset? This one allows me to draw 3 cards. This one allows me to draw 2 cards. They both cost the same and they both have the same points. So I'm going to take the 3 cards.
Yeah. Okay.
Goodbye.
All right, last phase of the game.
All right, we're in winter now. Uh-oh. Might want to keep cover. Thank you. I need to stop dropping cards. All right, so we've got left. These are our 3 winter cards.
And
so we've got
they are both 8.
Wise Traveler. This one's 9.
Yeah.
Question mark plus 2 points for each season of memory you have at game end. Winter Walk. This is a 10. Question mark plus equals 1 point for each item card you have at game end. And then 8,
That one's
monster.
worth 10.
When drawn, discard this.
Yeah, I can see where this would be. I can see where this phase of the game would take a little while
Right.
because you're just stockpiling points as best you can.
Yeah. And you also want to get all of your season cards out so you can count them. Because this counts as your deck, not what's in your draw pile.
But your discard pile counts.
Yeah,
Your discard pile doesn't count towards your final points.
let's see.
That's the That's
Right.
the assumption I've been operating under.
Right. Okay, game end. The game ends when only one memory card remains in the winter season. Players tally up the points in the card in their deck.
Mm-hmm.
So just these, the ones
Yeah.
that are turned over.
Yeah.
Not in your discard pile. Not in your
turned.
draw pile.
Yeah.
So at this point in the game, we might want to really kind of focus on getting these good cards out into our
Yeah, exactly.
deck.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. So let's see here. I've got an entertaining. Do I have an entertaining out? Oh, there it is. Whenever you draw an entertaining, draw again. Milk. Okay. Well, I can't do anything.
All right. Okay. So we've got book. When you draw a board card, discard this card.
Okay.
So when you look at this, now we have to think about what the totals are in these.
Yeah.
So some of these item cards have amounts that add into your score as well.
Mhm.
So like this is a good card for me to have up, but if I draw a board card, I have to put it back in my discard pile.
Mm-hmm.
So my hope is that it won't be discarded.
Yeah, exactly. Ooh, a grooming card. Good.
Okay. Feeding. So that is a.
Oh, actually, I get to draw another.
Oh
grooming
yes,
card
draw it
from
again.
you. And now that I actually hold a grooming card, wait a minute. Maybe draw a grooming card. Draw again.
I don't know why I bought this one because it doesn't affect me.
Oh, here we go.
Uh-oh.
Okay. Nope. Okay.
All right.
I was saying, here we go.
Yes. So because I'm a feeding dragon, I get to draw another card.
Mm-hmm.
And it says, whenever you draw a feeding, draw again. So next time. All right.
All right.
Go, my dear.
Sleeping, and whenever you draw a sleeping card, draw again. And then I get butterflies. When drawn, discard this unless you hold an entertaining. Do I have an entertaining? I've got an ad break in 3 minutes. I do have an entertaining.
Oh,
I
goodness,
do have
darling.
an entertaining. Okay. It's all coming together. Oh, yeah. It's all coming together.
Oh my gosh, you might be able to buy one of these fellows.
Yeah.
But you might want to not spend this one.
Exactly. That's the plan.
Yeah.
Let me see.
So you have 8, 9, 10. You have 11. You could
Yeah, I
buy
have 11.
this
Next
one.
turn. Yeah, next turn.
Yeah,
But-
you can buy that one next time. All right,
But I
I've got a
burned most of
feeding, but I already have a feeding card out, so I can't.
Yeah.
But I have this one, fruit. Whenever you draw a feeding, draw again.
Yeah.
So I just got sugary
Wait.
treat.
Draw butterflies. Why, you've been on stream before. Oh, the card. You have no idea. So, Digi, I don't know if you saw in my thing, but I'm shooting for a re-debut of January 10th. Originally, it was going to be January 4th, but I'm like, I think that's a little too close because I'm building a new system as well, and there's a lot of testing that I want to do. So yes, we are shooting for, and I want to do it on a weekend when people, on Friday or Saturday, when people are most ready for, or most available to come on in. So, yeah, but we are having a my live 2D debut will be, as of today, as of right now, on January 10th, once everything's all set.
Yay!
Yay. I'm so excited because I know.
Okay.
Okay, I know that you will be there, Aspen,
Absolutely.
and I know that a lot of people will be there. I'm
What
gonna
is it?
I'm gonna start really pushing my debut on the Nightmind
Oh, it's a
Discord
Friday.
server as well.
Yeah.
The 10th? Yeah, that's a Friday. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I should be able to finish my system and have it all set up by then. Okay, it's my turn, and I'm going to buy. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Well, it's 11.
You can take one of those cards back.
Actually,
and you have to give me. Yes.
The mentor card, and then I will buy Winter Walk.
Okay.
Walking in our winter underwear.
All right, so so I have 6. I can't buy anything yet.
Yeah.
So I drew an entertaining card.
Do you have one in there already?
I do not.
What?
I have a. Whenever you draw a board, do not discard an entertaining. So that will buffer me.
If you put in a throwing animation, you know as a spending Woolly fan will spam the heck out of throwing rubber chickens over puns. I don't have that, but I will work on that. Need to mark it on the calendar. It is January 10th.
Yeah. I promised somebody way before I debuted that I have to have a redeem with dragon cookies, so they can be thrown at me.
Okay.
Like little iced dragon cookies.
Picky.
Would be cute.
When drawn, discard this in a feeding, but my milk. Yeah, but I have
Your
the milk
milk
there.
rescues you.
The milk rescues me. Yes.
Yes.
But I'm running low on items because and that was kind of why I got the number what was it? Winter Walk.
Right. Okay. I drew a feeding, but I already have some feedings out. So there we go.
Okay. Entertaining. Do I have an entertaining? Nope. Nope. No. Okay.
Okay. Technically, I can do the monster card,
A monster.
which is when drawn, discard this. I think I want to wait though.
Or actually, I bought this. I have to put this in my discard, don't I? Or do you?
Yeah. Sometimes it's worth it to wait.
Yeah.
Until you have the cards out that you want.
Yeah, but at the same time, I'm also like, well, I gotta make sure Aspen doesn't get it.
Right. Okay. So I'm gonna pull a grooming card. Do I have anything related to grooming? No.
Okay. Speaking of grooming, and I don't have any on the field. And that's an incense card. When you draw Grumpy, do not discard Sleeping.
Right. Because right now I only have one season card that's worth 4 that's out on my deck.
Yeah.
So that's not useful.
Yeah.
I'm going to keep going. Entertaining. Do I have something related to... No, well...
it's a board.
Yeah.
So. Sleeping.
Sweepy baby. Okay. Board. When drawn, discard this and an entertaining. But I am protected. So there we go. And I also, when I draw a board card, I have to discard that card.
Yeah,
okay.
Exactly.
Which is unfortunate because that's a good card.
Yeah, exactly.
But,
1, 2,
whatever.
3, 4, 5. Okay, so I've got 5.
And I have...
Oh, Grumpy, but I have, whenever you draw Grumpy, do not discard Sleeping. So there's that.
So this is where it starts to pay off because now we can protect our cards that are on the board.
Yeah, exactly. As much as we can, anyway.
Yeah. All right. So I've got whenever you draw a Picky, do not discard a Fading. Whenever you draw a Grumpy, discard this card. Okay. So I need to shuffle my deck.
Oh, lucky.
Shuffle.
Oh, by the way, got Godzilla -1 on 4K. I'm gonna watch it on New Year's Day.
Cool.
Nice.
Oh, we're in the middle of an ad break. I forgot. I'm sorry. I usually try to stop during ad breaks.
Yeah, but the game was so engrossing.
Yeah.
This game's actually taking a little longer than I thought it would.
Yeah. It's a busy game. Maybe we can go back to finishing Fellowship after we finish watching that.
Maybe, yeah.
This.
We got a long way to go in that movie, so.
Yeah. We've gotten to Rivendell.
Yeah.
All right, so I need to pull. Brush. Whenever you draw a grooming, draw again.
Yeah. Okay. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And grooming.
Okay.
I've already got a grooming on the field, so I can't draw again.
Fruit. Whenever you draw a feeding, draw again.
Okay. And we are out of the ad break. Welcome back for those who were... Excuse me.
Those who are waiting for the ad break to finish.
Game is so engrossing. Been there, had days saying one more game with Kingdom Hearts 2 the night before class, and that turned into 5 a.m. before class.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I spent an entire, I think, 8 or 9 hours one day during the pandemic playing the first Witcher game.
Nice. I remember there was at least one day I basically spent 2 8-hour shifts playing Monster Hunter World when it was new.
Yeah. I think I have Monster Hunter World.
Yeah. Thank you, Mystic.
Yes. Thank you.
Right, your
here.
turn.
I just saluted you. So we'll show on Bond. Salute to Mystic. Okay. I'm gonna draw. Autumn Harvest. When drawn, you may discard a growth card you hold.
Oh,
growth card is these.
Yeah.
And then draw 3 cards. Then discard. So you may discard. It doesn't say you have to. You may. I'm not going to discard it. I'm going to put it over here. I don't need to.
Okay. Another grooming card. Okay.
All right. Book. When you draw a board card, discard this card. Okay. But I want that out because that also has points.
Mm-hmm. And then sleeping. And now I get to, that's the way I say it. It's a family trick. We call it talking Muffy.
Mm-hmm.
And when you meet my mom, she can tell you the story.
Yeah.
But it's how I talk to my kitties.
Ah.
How I talk to my kitties.
You're like a baby.
Mr. Marie.
Oh, it's like this. Oh, Bond, you're so cute.
Mr. Bond.
Baby, you're so cute. Oh my
Mr.
gosh.
Bond wearing the mittens.
Yes. When I go to Human Brothers Farm, I always shout out the window to the dogs and the sheep. I go, dogs, sheepins, hi.
Mark the re-debut stream as 1 to 4 in the morning on the 11th, unless I hear otherwise. Okay. Gotcha. All right there, Mystic. I know you'll be there. And if you can't be there, that's fine because that's really, really late.
I have just drawn a board card. Do I have a protective board? When you draw a board card, discard this card.
Yeah.
That sucks. Because I also... Yeah. Wait, when you discard this card.
Yeah.
That sucks because that has points on it.
Yeah.
And I also have to discard an entertaining card. And I know I have an entertaining card.
Okay. So now the question is...
Your turn, love.
This an entertaining... I do have an entertaining card. Rats.
I'm going to do this. I'm going to make this a little bit easier for me to see. I have 3 feeding cards out. No. 1, 2. That's 2 feeding cards.
Mm-hmm.
3 feeding cards.
The rest of the country.
Sleeping, grooming, entertaining, 1 of each, and I have the mentor card.
I live in my own time zone compared to the rest of the country. Well, 1 a.m. is still 1 a.m.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I don't care how old you are.
Right. All right. Grooming. Wait. When you draw grooming, draw again. Mm-hmm. We may be at the point where we're at endgame here.
Yeah.
Sleeping. Do I have something to do with sleeping? No.
Okay. Yeah, now it's just compiling points to compiling items. Entertaining.
Entertaining. That would be a music card.
Yeah.
I think. Or a book card. Bite. When drawn, discard this and a grooming.
I dropped a card.
Oh. Here.
I pulled the shutter.
Ah. There we go. Okay. So I got bite. When drawn, discard this and a grooming. Do I have a grooming card
yes,
out?
Yes,
I do. I have 2. Bummer.
Okay.
And I don't have anything else related to a grooming or a bite.
Yeah.
Okay.
Musical instruments. Okay. Whenever you draw an entertaining, draw again. Okay. Well. All right. It's your turn because I didn't draw an entertaining. That was my last turn.
Instead, whenever you draw sleeping, draw again.
Mm-hmm. Mick. Whenever you draw Bicky, discard this card.
And that's one that you want to hold on to because that has
points. Yeah.
Okay. Feeding. I'm never going to be able to draw another feeding because I have all my feedings out.
Mm-hmm.
But whenever you draw a feeding, draw again.
Mm-hmm.
That's musical instrument. Okay.
Brush. Whenever you draw grooming, draw again. Well, these are all item cards.
Right.
And I have something that I have a one of the winter cards that that gives me all my items.
Yeah. Okay. Fruit. Whenever you draw a feeding, draw again.
Picky. When drawn, discard this and a feeding, but I have milk. That one hurts though.
Right. Okay. Craft. When drawn, discard this.
Oh.
Now, at this point, though, the thing is...
It just says discard it.
Yeah.
So, lunchtime is breakfast for me. That's how out of step my sleep schedule is. Yep.
I remember reading a psychological study where this woman moved from the UK to the US.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing about this study was that for some reason, she would, like at breakfast, she would crave a soda and a cigarette.
Oh, yeah.
At lunch, she would crave, like, dinner. At breakfast, she would crave lunch. Like, it was her schedule for food was all mixed around.
Yeah.
And what they found out was that because she had moved to a different time zone, the times that she was craving certain kinds of meals and stuff it was still on UK time instead of US time.
That makes sense.
I thought that was really fascinating.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense to me.
Right.
Okay, I think I just took my turn because I just drew a bed.
Right.
So.
Wind chime. Whenever you draw a board, do not discard an entertaining. We have so many cards out right now.
Oh, grumpy. When drawn, discard this in a sleeping. I'm pretty sure I have that. Yep. Okay, better that than one of my item cards. I'm waiting on one item card.
Sleeping. Oh, anything to do with sleeping. Whenever you draw a sleeping card, draw again. And I drew a feeding. Anything with feeding? No, I'm good. Oh, no, wait. Whenever you draw a feeding, draw again.
Yep.
Entertaining. Whenever you draw an entertaining, draw again.
Okay.
Grumpy. When drawn, use this card to discard a sleeping.
Over this way.
Yeah.
I see one right there.
Yes, I'm going to use the 1 point sleeping.
Yep, of course.
All right.
Yeah.
All right, go ahead, my love.
All right. Grooming. Do I have anything that... whenever you draw a grooming, draw again. Shit! And another grooming card.
Right. I think I'm at the point where I only have growth cards left.
Yeah.
Like, I don't have any growth cards left in my deck, so I might have to buy.
Yeah.
So, let's buy.
Oh.
So,
no.
2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.
And there's the Wise Traveler. And then you
Yes.
give me the Mentor card. It doesn't do me any good, but...
And now I have the Wise Traveler.
And
So
that's
now
it.
we have to do math.
Yes.
So we've got our season cards.
It was 2 cards away!
We have item cards.
Oh, boy.
So the game tells us at this point, we do game end when only 1 memory card remains in the winter season. Players tally the points on the cards in their deck, and the player with the most points win. So do we need paper?
Do we?
I don't know. My brain is not the most mathy of brains.
Okay.
But I have...
You've got 3 season cards. I've got 2.
Right. Here, let me do this. I have a little... Since we talk about Spy Family a lot,
Yeah.
I have a little pad of Spy Family paper.
Nice.
Yes. That's little Anya. Because we like Anya.
Yes.
We stan in Anya.
We stand Anya here.
Yes. All right. So, my points.
All right, so how are you
And I
counting
have
your
a
points?
pen. So I have 4. So I have 4 plus 5. And then 1 plus 2 points for each season of memory you have at game end.
2, 4, 6.
So, all right. So 1, 2, 4, 6. All right. Plus 1.
Plus 6.
Plus 6. And then I have 3 on my item cards. So wait.
3
It
on your
says,
item cards. Yeah.
I don't think you get points for any growth cards.
No, I don't think so.
No. So you add up your, so 4 plus 5 plus 1 plus 6. That's 16.
Mm-hmm.
I'm glad I did it that fast in my brain. But that's easy because 4 plus 5 is 9 plus 1. Well, I just add the 1 to the 4. So it's 5 plus
Yeah.
5 is 10 plus 6 is 16.
Yeah.
All right. Cards in their deck and the player with the most point wins. So, and then I add 3.
Yep, 3. You don't get 1 for these ones too?
No. Oh, wait. Do I get 1 for those ones? I do, I think.
Yeah, so you got 3, 4, 5.
5. Plus 5 equals 21.
Okay.
Okay.
21.
All right, darling.
So I have 8 for my. Actually, I've got 8 base for my
Okay.
memory cards, but I get plus 2 and then plus 2 more because I have 2
Plus
iron
2
teapots.
plus 2. So 8, 9, 10, 11, 12.
12, okay. And then for my teapot, and then for my teapot cards, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Plus 5.
I think that's it.
I make 17.
17.
I won!
Ah.
But so 17, 18, 19, 20. 4 points.
Yep, 1 by 4.
Yeah. Good job, Ginseng, little friend.
If I had
Good growth. Yeah.
if I had gotten, that was the card I was waiting for. If I had gotten this card, I would have won.
Yeah,
'Cause
that
it-
was the only one I had left, too.
Yeah, because it said plus 1 point, 4 plus 1 point for each item card you have. So it would have been 4 plus 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, which would have given me 10 points.
Right. So now the fun thing is we have to divide up all the cards.
Yeah. Oh, and I also had a farmer's market card that I didn't get.
Yes.
That I didn't get. So.
So I'm pulling all of the ginseng cards first.
All right. I need to get all the jasmine cards.
Because we like to be orderly.
Jasmine.
So I've got all the ginseng cards.
Jasmine.
You know, it's nice to put
And another.
away your game so other
Yeah.
people can play.
Jasmine.
They have an extension game for this as well.
Oh, expansion?
Expansion called Autumn Harvest. Actually, you can see this on the thing that came. So it's Autumn Harvest, and they actually have a Princess game too.
Yeah.
You know, and I think the books are fantastic.
Yeah.
So this shows the different books. So there's 3 graphic novels: the Tea Dragon Society, the Tea Dragon Festival, and the Tea Dragon Tapestry. And then on the bottom it has those 3 books: Dewdrop, which looks like it's about.
Gesundheit.
Thank you, darling. So Dewdrop, which is about an axolotl; Princess, which is excellent. If you like awesome, wholesome sapphic stories.
Yeah.
And Aquacorn Cove. So I love stuff like this because it's just so. Everybody needs some wholesome.
Yeah.
I will show you guys the other dragons because this is an up to a 4-player game. So that's Chamomile, and this one is Rooibos. So it's a super cute game.
Yeah. This was actually pretty cozy as far as
Yeah.
card games go.
Right. I mean, it has a competitive aspect to it, but it's got a lot of charm to it. So it's not like a game where it's like, everybody's gonna be mean to each other. And,
It's not like Risk.
oh gosh, yeah, I cannot play certain games with certain people in the human dragon family.
Yeah.
Because a certain person in the human... I've spoken of him before.
A certain person in the human family is particularly cutthroat, I think.
Yes, he is very cutthroat. I think you guys have a blast with Chronicles of Crime.
Interesting. Have you or any of you ever played Stardew Valley board game? You know what? My sister might know of it because she is very big into Stardew Valley. She's basically done everything in it. There's also a card game called Let's Go to Japan that's really fun. You basically plan a trip to Japan, and all the cards have actual sightseeing spots. That's actually really cool. It makes me think of the Carmen Sandiego games. Yeah.
I would love to play the uber classic Carmen Sandiego games. Let's put the instructions in there, and there's more instructions, and there's these cards too.
Oh,
we forgot those.
Yep. Those are the cards that you use once per game. Yeah.
Correct.
Easy to forget about them.
Yeah.
So there is that is the Tea Dragon Society board game or card game. Excuse me.
Yeah.
Not a board game, a card game.
Yeah.
There is cardboard under this, but
yeah. Yeah. So it's kind of nice when you have a fellow VTuber friend come over.
Yep.
So you can do things like play games that aren't just on the computer.
Exactly.
And
even more special when it's your girlfriend.
Right. Or boyfriend. Or, person of, your partner, I guess.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's not gender things too much. It's so funny. There's a, what do you call it? A Facebook page. I haven't been on Facebook in ages. But there's a Facebook page called something like, "This is unnecessarily gendered." And I'm like, when I'm at work. So, a funny story about working at the Dragon Clinic. So, our clinic software, it's an online software that we use to enter information about our patients. And, of course, one of the questions is, we ask for somebody's emergency contacts. And, if it's a husband or a wife in that spot, I always purposefully just put in spouse. Because it is non-gender specific.
Yes.
But we started letting people fill out their own information online now. So you'll start seeing husband or wife or whatever. But I always like to put spouse because, then it's not gendered.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
And our software is really cool, actually. It does ask patients not both their it asks them their pronouns, which is kind of cool.
Yeah.
So.
And I work where I work. The college I work at, 70% of the student body is LGBTQ+. And so it's this is definitely a more maybe welcoming isn't quite the right word, but a more a more diverse environment than I'm used to, and definitely an environment that really encourages openness, or being out and stuff like that. And we have a lot of trans students. We have a lot of students that identify as queer. And so it's a bit of a learning experience for me because I've never been in such an environment before at work.
But it's kind of cool. I'm very grateful for how many years I lived in San Francisco, because it's a place where a lot of people gravitated to because they feel like they're safe being themselves,
Mm-hmm.
you know? And it's why it's really important to me that I have a community where people feel like it's safe to be themselves. Like,
Yeah, exactly.
I know I did that stream after the election. I said, you know, no matter what, you're welcome here, you're safe here, I care about you, I don't care what your identity is as long, I mean, I care what your identity is because it's part of who you are, but it is not going to affect whether I care about you or not.
Damn, Panda, you got yourself a San Fran girl. I did.
Yeah.
I did. And then
Yeah. One of the most educated cities in the entire United States.
Yeah.
Lots of very highly educated people in San Francisco.
And I could tell from the minute I started talking to Aspen for the very first time, it's like, this lady knows exactly this lady knows exactly what's going on. She's educated. I can tell by the way the way she speaks that she is educated.
Right. Well, it helps them a writer too. And I mean, I do have my degree in clinical psychology. That's a master's degree. So, you know, I don't have a PhD. I will admit that. No wonder it's the queer capital. True. Although some people would say New York City is also like the East Coast queer capital of the world.
Yeah.
Or
exactly.
of the U.S. And San Francisco is like the West Coast queer capital. But, yeah, it's nice. I think it's nice living in places where diversity is welcomed. You know, I feel like for me, when I surround myself with diversity, that means I have more opportunity to learn. And I think it's important to be somebody who's always willing to learn. You know, I think that's huge.
Yeah.
So, you know, I think it keeps your brain young.
Yep.
I think it keeps your heart young. You know, it helps you to be open to so many new and valid and valuable experiences.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
I think, you know, I kind of shy away from the old thing that says diversity is our strength and stuff like that. Diversity is what makes things fun, you know?
Yeah.
It's kind of like eating different things in your diet. Now,
Right.
this is not to criticize people who have, shall we say, aversion, like texture aversions or something like that. Food aversions, all kinds of stuff.
Or
like
allergies.
Or
you
allergies.
know, all that stuff is legit.
Yeah, exactly. But, you know, in life, you just got to eat your damn vegetables sometimes.
Right. I mean, like, you know, I feel like you know, you learn a lot about a culture by its food. And I've been very fortunate because I lived, especially in San Francisco, it's a very foodie city. So I've tried a lot of different foods. Like, how many people in, you know, rural Midwest have tried natto enough to be able to say if they like it or not? You know? Or how many people in, you know, I think it's really, really cool because when you engage in a culture's food, you learn about what's important in that culture.
Exactly.
Like, and in the way how you eat it too. Like, Korean culture is super cool in the way how they eat food, I think.
Yeah.
Because they'll have like lots and lots of side dishes.
Banchan.
Right. And you're supposed to, now correct me if I'm wrong, because you spent some time there.
Yes, I lived in Korea for about a year.
Right. So it's important to feed each other as well as feed, you know, yourself.
Yeah.
So it's important to share food, and sometimes you'll put food on somebody else's plate for them.
Yes. Dining is a very communal thing in Korea, more so than it is here.
Right.
Like, you know, you figure, you go out and you get the same thing, and you get like different things, and you try out and this, that, everything else. But no, you're like the Korean barbecue, what they would call yakiniku in Japan. It's it's all communal. Everybody, you know, fries. Everybody, you know, sizzles up their own beef and all the things that go on with it, and it's like eating out with my colleagues in Korea was some of the most fun I ever had.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah,
just
yeah.
because it is so much fun and it is so communal.
Right. And even, different kinds of silverware that you use in different countries.
Mm-hmm.
And, whether you use what foods are eaten with hands,
Mm-hmm.
are countries where you put everything in like a pita or a tortilla and you eat it that way. Or,
Yes, indeed.
it's kind of cool to see all the traditions around food.
Yeah.
You know.
I like it. You just gotta eat your damn vegetables sometimes. Scarfs down cake in defiance. 1 hour later. Oh, my tummy hurts. I had too much killer shrew.
we have we have brownies downstairs
We do.
and leftover pizza.
Yes, we do. And
Although I'm
it's
not super hungry right now, but
no,
we
neither am I.
have food if we need to.
If we want
Yeah,
to, yeah.
yeah. I mean,
Exactly.
pizza is so. I mean, yeah, brownies and pizza. Yeah,
It's Domino's thin crust pizza.
and we have salad
Mm-hmm.
and the Parmesan bites. Oh my God, we have so much food. We'll be able to eat for a couple days.
Yeah.
Yeah. We'll be good.
Due turn. How you doing?
Yeah, hey, LT. I hope you're doing well. I know that I'm streaming earlier than I usually do, and on a day I don't usually.
LT on the beat.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So, LT, you always call me mother.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm dating Panda.
Yep.
So, just so you know,
Yep. We are
a mother
dictating.
has a boyfriend.
Exactly.
Right,
Exactly.
right. But yeah, we've been having such a blast the past few days.
I know. I don't want to leave.
And it's been so. Actually, when I went to pick up the pizza
Yep.
on my way home, it hit me. It was like, oh wait, how many days do we have left? Oh no.
Yeah.
Like I was like, no, he has to stay longer.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
I don't want to
Yeah.
leave because I don't want to be without my Aspen.
Right. I
But,
think
I've invited her. Dad.
Dad.
That's right. I'm yo
Are
daddy.
you my father?
I'm yo daddy.
Hello, mother. Hello, father. Here I'm at. Good night.
Yes, exactly.
Right. Oh my gosh, it's Dad. Papa Panda.
Papa
right.
Panda.
Right.
Papa
right.
Panda. I like the sound of that. Papa Panda. I'm gonna have
Yeah.
to start calling myself.
Papa Panda.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
I have invited Aspen down to the den.
Yeah.
And
To visit the Panda family, the
Yeah.
Pandaroo family.
Yeah, the Panda fam. And,
Yeah.
yeah, and hold on.
Hold on. There's been hints. I've been better at hiding.
I am.
But Panda's been obvious.
I have no poker face. I
Yeah.
have no poker face. Like when I beat Altered Beast during one of my practice streams for Christmas, like I legit could not hold it in because I need to take a lap. I legit could not hold that in because I was like, because legit that was the first time I had beaten that since since my cousin Adam had passed away.
Da 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 da. Oh.
Na, 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 na.
Da 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 da. Oh gosh, one of my human ants made up a variation by doing a mashup between the Brady Bunch theme song and the Addams Family theme
Yeah.
song. I can sing it. I think it won't. I don't think it'll violate anything because it's actually a song that she made up,
Yeah.
but it's to the tune of the Brady Bunch.
Mhm.
So what it is there's a story of a man named Gomez. There's a story of an ugly lady bringing up 3 very ugly girls. All of them had straight back hair like their mother. The youngest ones were dead. There's a story of a man named Gomez bringing up Pugsley, Uncle Fester, Grandmama. They were 4 heads all stuck together, and they rolled on the floor. Till the one day when Morticia met this Gomez, and they knew it was much more than a hunch, that this troop must somehow form a family. That's the way they all became the Addams Bunch. The Addams Bunch. Snap, snap, the Addams Bunch. That's the way they became the Addams Bunch. Dumb song. Actually, when I used to work as a nanny, I made up a new version of Twinkle Twinkle Little Star. This is too much all in one day. Yeah. So my version. So I was taking this little boy. His name was Ian. Out for a walk.
Mm-hmm.
Sweetest kid. Oh my God,
Mm-hmm.
I adored Ian. He was such a smart kid. He probably would have loved the Tea Dragon Society.
Yeah.
And playing that with me. He used to like to draw dragons. Anyway, we were out for a walk, and I was like, "Oh, let's make up new lyrics for Twinkle Twinkle Little Star." And I'd be like, "Okay, so give me something, then I'll turn it into a new song." So we did Twinkle Twinkle Little Cat, Twinkle Twinkle Little Dog, and then he said Twinkle Twinkle Little Car. So we did Twinkle Twinkle Little Car, and then he thought and he thought and he thought, and he was very serious. He said, "How about Twinkle Twinkle Little Skyscraper Car?" I'm like, okay. So
okay, let me hear it.
I came up with it. I was like, okay. Twinkle, twinkle, little skyscraper car. How I wonder what you are. Are you a building or are you a car? Will you stand still or will you take me very far?
Mm-hmm.
Twinkle, twinkle, little skyscraper car. How I wonder what you are.
Oh,
Yeah.
That's good. That's
yeah,
good.
yeah.
We are up to 9 viewers.
Oh.
Holy smokes.
Yeah, yeah.
That is wonderful.
Right. So yeah, anything else we should talk about or do? I mean, it's we've been streaming for 3 hours.
Just about, yeah.
And I know we do want to finish at least Fellowship.
Yeah, we at least
We
wanna
have at
do
least
that.
an hour and a half left of that.
Yeah, exactly. The fact it somehow works.
Not sweetest than me. Oh well, but we don't talk about. Yeah, we don't talk about the house arrest.
Oh my
The
goodness.
fact it somehow works. Yeah, it does somehow work. Twinkle, twinkle, little skyscraper car, and the Adams
I think
bunch.
it says something about your creativity that you're able to make that stuff.
Oh
work.
my God, it
I
was
can-
crazy.
I can make. I try to make silly songs. For years and years, I just could not make it work. But and it's out of season, so I can't work on it now. But I tried to make a pirate version of The Most Wonderful Time of the Year. It's been in my head every time for years and years and years, and I just cannot make it.
It's
just
the
cannot make it.
most wonderful time.
Actually, I got it. It's the most plunderful time
Ah.
of the year. And in the background, they go yo ho. So yeah, and then my favorite thing is one of the thing I just came up with, the silly lyric I came up with. They list off all the things in my favorite things because somehow that's a Christmas song. I'm like,
Yeah.
tied up with strings. These are a few of my non-Christmas things. Can't believe.
I think it's because it says snowflakes that rain on my nose and eyelashes.
Yeah, and then like brown paper packages tied up with strings.
Yeah.
But like a bunch of other things, it's like that's totally not Christmas.
I can't believe Panda's my father now.
You are safe with me, son.
You have good nerdy guidance
Yes.
in your panda father.
Your nerd education shall be
Yes.
comprehensive.
So one thing Panda got recently, I know you guys have seen me stream Ale and Tail Tavern with Ocha, but Panda has it too now. So
Yeah.
we might be able to have a 3-way
Yeah,
Ale and Tail Tavern stream.
exactly. Hey,
That'd
more-
be ridiculously awesome.
more hands around the tavern.
Right, right.
Yeah, and I may, depending on when my pay comes in from work, because I don't know if it's going to come in tomorrow because I get my pay early, or if it's going to be coming in on Thursday when it usually does. My bank allows me to get my pay a day or two early. So depending on basically whenever they, send it to the bank to clear or something like that. But it's not online multiplayer, but someone needs to get both Coffee Talk games. I do have Coffee Talk Digi.
Uncle Ocha.
Depending on what happens, I may also give Vampire Therapist a whirl.
Let's see.
because-
Let me look up Coffee Talk. Is it on Steam?
It is. It was like $10 when I got it. So
Okay. Star.
Let's see. Uncle Ocha.
That's me. Why did I type in Steam? Coffee Talk. FFE-T. There we go. Coffee Talk.
Oh, it's on sale.
Oh, and
Exactly.
there's multiple Coffee Talks.
Yeah, there's like Coffee Talk, and then there's Coffee Talk Episode 2 and stuff like that.
Coffee brewing and heart-to-heart talking simulator about listening to fantasy-inspired modern people's problems and helping them by serving them a warm drink or two.
Yeah.
That's kind of cool.
Yeah. Yeah, I bought it because I was looking for recommendations on chill games, and Digi came up with that one.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like,
Look, it says similar to games I've played, Unpacking and Refined Self. I was telling you about that game.
Yeah.
Yeah. It'd be interesting to see what you score if you play Refined Self.
Panda, make sure Aspen looks both ways, please.
Yes.
Always, always, always. And I get to make latte art. I am so jealous of people that can make latte art.
Yeah, it's actually pretty impressive.
Yeah, like the anime latte art that you can see on stuff and all
Right,
that.
right. So Panda can look at my library and confirm how many games I have.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So that's in my... I don't put everything I've actually completed in my completed list, but it's more like my played game list. So there's 36 games in my... Or 39 games in my played games list.
Mm-hmm.
I have... In my favorites, I have 6. And then in my uncategorized, I have 205.
I actually compiled all of my games between all of the online storefronts that I use and stuff like that. I've got over 400 games.
And this is only my Steam account. I do have games on GOG and Amazon Gaming and what's the other one? Epic
Game Store?
Yeah, I have that's how I have Fortnite and Infinity Nikki.
Yeah.
So that's just 2 games.
Let me see. You're in an alternate world where the humans and the supernatural work 9 to 5s, and you hear them out. But in some cases, their fates are in your hands. Wow.
Ooh, interesting.
I like that. I like that a lot. I think it's cool.
Yeah.
So, we are at 2 hours, 45 minutes. What do you think there, sweetie?
Let's end.
All right.
Yeah. So, I'm really glad that we can share this very, very happy news that we are together.
Yep.
You know, I think one of the big reasons why we're together is because we see eye to eye on things. And that, to me, has always been the most important thing.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I want somebody who's my equal.
Yes.
You know, and, you know, Panda's somebody who is very intelligent and especially emotionally intelligent. Yeah, I'm glad you got to see
date game night.
Yeah. But, you know, when the best way to have a good relationship is just talk openly.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and that's kind of why, in some ways, us meeting online really helped because we were able to talk about a lot of important stuff before we met in person.
And then we just talked about even more important stuff.
Oh my gosh, we have been talking almost nonstop. That's part of why we kept getting interrupted while watching Lord of the Rings. We were talking.
Yeah.
Even though we were enjoying the movie, we just were we were like, oh, well, this thing about this and that thing about that and so and blah blah blah. So
well, that was one of my fears when I came in. I was like, oh my god, am I going to be able to keep this? Am I going to be able to speak with Aspen the same way that I do online? Is it going to be like, am I going to freeze? Am I going to do this? Am I going to do that? And the answer has been no.
Yeah,
like
the yapping. The yapping is the yappening.
The yappening.
And I think what Panda is finding too is that, you know, I can talk, but I can listen.
She's an extremely good listener.
You know?
She's very good at listening.
I really try to pay attention to what people say.
Yeah.
You know, I was explaining to him, like, for me, I'm not the kind of person who dates multiple people at one time.
No.
For me, part of it feels like ethically unfair, but also because, like, if I'm talking to one person, they get 100% of my attention when I talk with them.
Yeah.
If another person joins the conversation, I I give the first person 100% and the second person 100%
Mm-hmm.
because I think people deserve to have full attention. And then if a third person comes in, it's like 100%, 100%, 100%. That's a lot of energy to expend on people.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, I only date one person at a time.
Yeah.
Because I want to give whatever relationship I'm in a real chance to become something meaningful.
Mm-hmm.
You know? And I feel like I want to give that other person really a chance to show me who they are. And it also gives me a chance to show them who I am. So, you know, some people are very casual with dating. I'm not.
No.
Like, I don't, and I've spent a lot of time alone because I don't just casually date. And I know a lot of
Correct.
people are like, you know, they'll just date someone just to have a boyfriend or a girlfriend, and that's fine.
Yep.
You know, what works for one person doesn't work for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
You know? I'm open to the idea of dating multiple people at the same time, but I'm not, like, very good at actively putting myself out there to look for other people to date when I can't see my partner.
Yeah, I am a one person dater because like I agree with you. It's not fair to my other partners if I'm seeing multiple people at the same time, and quite frankly, that's a lot to keep track of.
It is.
I don't like that.
I'm monogamous by default. That's how I joke about it. I mean, yeah, a little bit, but you know, like, to me, it's just like the kind of person I am is I respect people. Like, automatically, there's a certain level of respect I give everybody. I'll always do my best, like, you know, and Panda's seen this. When I'm at a restaurant, I'm gonna be polite.
Yeah.
I say thank you. You know, if I say please. You know, people who are serving me at a restaurant, they deserve just as much respect as, you know, a politician in my eyes. Yeah, I'm very long distance with my partner, but I'm very committed. Like, if I saw other people, they'd have to be okay with the fact that I have someone I want to be in long term.
Yes.
And that's the thing too. You have to communicate.
Yes.
Like, if I were to date other people, I sure as hell would be telling Panda.
Yeah.
You know, so at least he can make a decision for himself. You know, if he wants to be with somebody who is dating other people. Now, given that is not who I am.
Yes, exactly.
You know, and I think, you know, for me, if I were dating someone and they were just dating around with a lot of other people, I'd feel a little uncomfortable.
Yeah. And in my case, you know, there's really no reason for me to do that, especially since, you know, I you know, date with purpose. I don't date for the sake of it.
With intention.
I date with intention. When you know, I'm with somebody, it's because I well and truly care about them. I have incredibly strong feelings for them, and you know, it's if I was to, you know, date just for the sake of dating, that's a drain on time. That's a drain on other resources.
Oh my gosh, dating is so expensive
these days. Yeah.
And it's a lot of, we're talking about this, how kind of bullshit dating is.
Oh yeah.
Like,
it's
you know,
brutal now.
Oh, it's brutal. People are like, oh yeah, you have to go to this fancy dinner, so you have to have this fancy outfit, and you have to bring these fancy flowers, and you have to bring these fancy jewelry gifts, and you have to spend like a few $100s on the meal, and you have to leave a tip, and then you have to go to movie or theater afterwards. That's another few $100s. I'm like, after a while, you're spending, like, you could be spending $1,000 or more on a date.
Exactly.
Who has that money?
Yeah.
Not in this economy.
And there's there's also, you know, the other things that come later, like, you know, sex part of a relationship. You know, it's almost like there's an expectation. Right. You know, like, it's like, oh, you have to, it's like, okay, you spent all this money on her and she hasn't put out, you know, from the male, speaking from the male perspective. Right. And I'm like, what's so wrong with just, like, going to the park and, you know, going for a walk? Just going for a walk. That was what we did.
Yeah. People working in restaurants arguably deserve more respect than politicians. Yeah.
Not even arguably.
Yeah, not even arguably. Or you can pay $200 for Pizza Hut to give you a limo and a personal pan pizza. Right. So like when he arrived a couple days ago,
Yeah.
we went out to lunch.
Mm-hmm.
That was like what, $35.
Yeah.
And then with some tip, I guess.
Yeah.
And then we went out for a walk to a nearby lake.
Mm-hmm.
That was it.
Yeah.
You know, yesterday we had Subway.
Mm-hmm.
That was like what?
It was like $25.
$25. Today, like I ordered the pizza. That was like I had a free pizza.
That was another 25.
Right.
You know.
So yeah, but it's stuff that we would have bought ourselves to eat already.
Exactly.
Except we got to eat with each other and have conversations.
Yeah.
You know.
And then we watched part of Lord of the Rings, which we still gotta finish. You know.
Oh, we watched some Tenari no Seki-kun yesterday.
Yes. I was so happy to see that because I'm like, first of all, I'd never seen it before. Second of all, Monica Rial knocks it out of the park as a Yoiko, and not to mention just the situations get progressively more silly.
Right.
You know?
Right.
I was in therapy last week, and my therapist asked if I was actively dating, and I said, well, yeah, but only so much as I can do while not being on dating apps and not leaving my house. She responded, so, like, if someone randomly shows up at your house...
Okay, instant date. Just add water.
I was going to say, is it like when the guy shows up at the lady's house in Hellraiser?
Right. But yeah, like, you know, I think mostly we're focused on enjoying time together.
Exactly.
And you don't have to spend loads of money to enjoy time together.
No.
And I think that's a healthier way to date too, because then it's not about the stuff.
Mm-hmm.
It's about talking with each other, enjoying spending time with each other.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't know, I know there's some, you know, thoughts about the 5 love languages, which we talked about with my mom today, with Human Mother. And I was like, you know, for me, when I take that test, it's pretty much a tie for me with my love language, which is quality time and physical affection.
Yeah.
And Panda knows this because I hug him all the freaking time. Oh my God, I am such a huggy person.
I haven't complained once for what that's worth.
Yeah. I mean, luckily he likes being hugged. So it's like, oh my gosh, so many hugs. Yeah. He's gonna go home. He's gonna be like, oh my gosh, I'm detoxing from the hugs. Help! I need more hugs.
I am gonna be so hug deprived when I march into work on Thursday. I'm gonna be like, where are my hugs, Aspen? Right. Aspen, I'll pay for the gas. Can you come on down?
Right. Ocha said she responded to. Oh no, honestly, I think people would be happy if the first date was just a good time, even if it's Taco Bell, since as said things are expensive.
Yeah.
Yeah, like. Coffee dates make sense.
Oh, yeah.
You know, I mean, I don't drink coffee. I'm a tea person, but you can get tea at a coffee place. Usually, it's not good tea.
I drink enough coffee for both of us.
Yeah. It's great because if he likes coffee and I like tea, that means it's more tea for me and more coffee for him.
Exactly.
Perfect.
Although I have drank tea while we were here. What was that? Ginger turmeric. Ginger turmeric tea. Yeah,
from Gamer Subs. Freaking Gamer Subs makes tea, guys. By the way, and it's good.
She sold me single-handedly on Gamer Subs, guys.
Yeah.
So now I got to get my own Gamer Subs code.
Yeah.
Stuff like that.
Yeah, Gamer Subs. Hi.
Hi, Gamer Subs.
Hi.
Can you have like a? Hi. Can you have like? Do you have like a special couples, VTuber couples flavor that you're working on? Or, you know, Gamer Subs 10% off discount code.
For us just being cute?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
I think we probably need a certain number of followers and stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
But I mean, you know, that stuff will come with time.
It will. The Gamer Subs and the Gamer Subs and the gaming dates and stuff like that, where we're insufferable.
Yeah.
And then the next thing you know, we're working together with Iron Mouse. She's like, God damn, get a room, you two. Yeah.
I love Iron Mouse so much. She is such a she is the gateway representative to VTubers in the best way.
She is.
Like, she's so unproblematic.
Mm-hmm.
She is very kind. And
she's unbelievable, and she's funny,
and she's generous
Yeah.
as heck.
yeah.
I drink enough coffee for the both of us. Coffee. That is how much I have a holy amounts of soda and crashes. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
When does a snore become a pig snort?
I don't know. Do I snore?
No.
I don't think you snore either.
No, I know for a fact that I don't.
Mhm.
And if you do snore, I haven't been awake for it.
Okay.
So-
All right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think I snore.
Yeah.
I think I'm very fortunate in that.
Yeah.
But I do clench my jaw sometimes when I sleep.
Yeah, I think part of the last couple cavities I had, I know one of them that I had, my dentist was like, oh, no, don't worry. It's because that's one of the hardest places to get. Everybody gets cavities there, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm sitting there and I'm like, what am I doing wrong? I didn't have any cavities, like, in my entire life. Now I've had, like, 5 in the last 2 years, you know?
Yeah. We got to get off all that sugar.
I know.
It's sugar and starchy foods because starchy foods stick to your teeth.
I do eat starchy foods quite a lot.
Yeah.
It's those French fries, I swear.
Yeah, I go for those white cheddar Cheez-Its quite a lot. They're so good. And they don't have sugar in them. No
Yeah.
added sugar.
Yes, and Aspen's helping me go low to no sugar. Now,
Please excuse the brownies in the other room.
hey, you know what? It's a New Year's resolution.
Yes. We
in-
can work on that together.
We can. In my case, and I've said this before, as a recovering alcoholic, it's very, very hard to stay away from sugar many times. My 2 big vices are sugars and coffee. And I don't even know if you could call my coffee a vice for me because of the simple fact that I have it, I always take it black. Always. And, but, that's one thing I really need to work on because I've gained 7 pounds and I would do well to lose them.
Yeah, we're gonna work hard. We are fighting creatures.
Yeah.
This is too much for me. I need another nap.
Aw.
It's okay, LT.
Papa Panda says it's okay to
take a nap.
Please take a nap.
Yeah,
if you need it.
I was tempted to take a nap today. I was like,
Oh, you should have.
know.
Oh,
But
you saw
you
me
know,
yesterday.
it's so hard for me because like when I'm awake, I want to be awake.
Yeah.
Like I want to be awake for everything. I don't want to miss anything.
Yes.
And then when I'm asleep, I'm like dead to the world.
Yeah, exactly.
I am one tired dragon.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
I can be one tired panda. She saw me yesterday. I was napping on the couch.
He was so cute. He was all cuddled up. I was like, oh, his head was sticking out. I was like, ah. All right. Well, we have an ad break coming up. We might as well end now.
Yeah, might as well.
Yeah.
I think that's the perfect time.
All right. Well, good night, everybody.
Good
Should we do the
night.
little heart thing again? There.
Yeah.
Yay. I will not be streaming until Thursday for our usual co-working stream.
Yes.
And then Friday will be Final Fantasy.
Mm-hmm.
I will try to post my schedule this week sometime soon.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Until the next one, and congrats on making it official. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank
Yay.
you. Yay. As for me, I do not know when I'll be streaming again. It's probably going to be Thursday, and new year, new month. And as people know, I am very big on themed months, and the month that we will be going to is Nintendo 64 month. So the first game we will be playing for 2025 will be the Rareware Classic Banjo-Kazooie.
Nice.
So yes, and we'll be making use of our Mister for that.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, this thing is so cool. It's amazing.
Yeah,
Can
show
I
it on
show
stream.
it?
Yeah, show it.
Yeah. All those games using this.
Yeah.
This little thing. This little box. It's smaller than the box that the game comes in.
Exactly. This little box of magic, as I like to call it, is what I use to play my Sega Genesis games on, but I have many other systems that I haven't really featured on this.
Okay.
And I will be using Nintendo 64 month to feature Banjo-Kazooie at the very least.
And maybe while he's here, I'll pick his brain to see about my capture card.
Yeah.
Because then I have a PS2,
Mm-hmm.
and I have a Switch.
Yep.
And I actually have one of those NES Classics.
Mm-hmm.
But, I mean, you pretty much can play all those games on the Switch as well.
Yeah, exactly.
But, you know, maybe I might start playing some Switch games or some old PS2 games.
Okay.
So that would be really fun.
Yeah.
So, because I have a few.
Yeah.
One of my favorites. Tiny box.
Yeah.
Yeah, right? I mean, it's like, what? That does all that?
Yep.
You can play, like, hundreds of games using
Thousands.
that? Thousands of games.
Yep.
Oh my gosh, you guys. Thousands.
And the best part about it was that I used this when I first got it. I used it to host Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo tournaments. I actually built up a pretty good community.
Right. So I'm going to do, Ad is coming up in just a moment. I'm going to find somebody to raid.
Spooky cat killer.
So, let's see. Grimbon, Nightly. Oh, we can do Swimming Link.
Okay.
We can do Almontes. I like him a lot.
Yeah.
We were talking about him earlier. He's a really cool guy. Very intelligent. Archivist Emmy, keep talking. Nobody explodes. That's a fun game.
Yeah. I want to play that with my sister. She actually has a MetaQuest VR headset, so I can give her the directions and she can play.
Cool.
I can't handle VR, but she can.
Okay. Let's go to swimming.
Yeah.
Swimming's our good friend. Swimming was in chat earlier, so yes. Let's go to swimming. So, Twitch. Raid.
I like how the raid is a parachute.
Yes.
And she's
There we
playing
go.
web fishing.
Yeah.
That's a very popular one.
All right, and that's muted. Okay, good. So we're going to start raid. And have a lovely evening, you guys. I'm going to switch to the end screen. Bye.